Susan will be holding up the discussion. Susan, I think.
Susan, there she goes again.
You
Okay,
check to see if
Susan, check. You're on call.
Better check that.
Susan, I think your phone's ringing.
Susan, it's for you. They couldn't reach you.
All
They're
right,
calling your microphone.
now we know. Anybody says that tonight.
You know what I'll say?
Oh, it's seven.
I'm on call and I have to go to the hospital.
She'll go, no, that's not mine. Yes,
Yes, it is.
CNET, are you good? Is CNET good? Did you fix all our problems too? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Staff?
Sure.
All right. All right. Well, we'll call to order this College Township Council regular meeting for Thursday, October 3rd. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Move on to public open discussion. Does anyone wish to come up and discuss anything that is not part of this evening's agenda? All right, I don't see any hands. I don't see anybody online. All right, we'll go on to new agenda items. Any members of council wish to add an agenda item to the agenda? All right, moving right along. Oh, did you want to add something? No, are you sure?
I'm positive.
Moving right along to special presentation number 1, Local Traffic Advisory Committee Annual Update. Don Hartzell.
Thank you, Dustin. I'm Don Hartzell. I'm chair of the Local Traffic Advisory Committee. I don't want to go through all the things I've said in years past, but I do want to remind everybody that we have 4 citizens on our committee, that myself, Earl Moore, who's vice chair, Dr. Ron Smith, and Pat Vernon. We also have on our committee Council Rep Susan Trainer, Township Engineer Don Franson, Township Public Works Director Amy Kerner, and we have 5 ex officio members: State College Police Department, the Center, LifeLink, Alpha Fire Department, Alpha Fire Company, State College Area School District, and Center Regional Planning Agency. So I already have the slide up here that I want to talk about, so I will move right on to that. If you'll recall, you approved. We had a situation in the Center Hills Village, where we had a lot of cut-through traffic and speeding on Oak Ridge Avenue and Shamrock Avenue. And last year you approved a little over $100,000 to install 7 speed humps. These are Watt speed humps on Oak Ridge Avenue and 7 on Shamrock Avenue. That was done, and with the help of Trans Associates, we were able to do some traffic studies. I will remind you that a Watt speed hump is designed to reduce speed up to 8 miles per hour and cut through traffic up to 18%. When, as you can see on this chart, and this is looking at traffic volume, the traffic volume eastbound was reduced by 55% on Oak Ridge Avenue and 45% on Shamrock Avenue. This is overall traffic, not necessarily cut-through traffic, but bear in mind that most people that live in the neighborhood are going to come and go no matter whether there's speed humps or not. So I think you can pretty much assume that even though we didn't do actual cut-through traffic, we looked at overall traffic, that all that, the majority of that change, that reduction, was cut-through traffic. The other thing to bear in mind is that the initial study was done in April 2021, and then we just completed last month, Trans Associates in September completed the after study, and in between there we opened the 651 bed Aspen College State College Student Housing Complex. So the fact that we reduced the traffic volume that much, even after we added the 650 beds to the neighborhood, I think is very effective. Next slide. Any questions on that slide?
I do have one, Don.
Okay, and back up.
You mentioned eastbound, so are those numbers just one direction?
Yes.
Okay, so that's.
Yeah,
east-
we were trying to capture cut-through traffic coming from the student housing, coming from College Avenue, going to Giant and Wise and all on off of Branch Road.
Thank you.
Next slide. And this shows the reduction in speed. Remember I said that a Watt speed hump is designed to reduce speeds up to 8 miles per hour, and that occurred on westbound Oak Ridge Avenue as reduced speed by 8 miles per hour, and that's a 24% reduction in speed. Although the speed originally in 85th percentile was about 32 miles per hour. So it still represents, speed wasn't as big of a factor to us as the volume of traffic, but it still was a factor. And this shows a reduction of 8 miles per hour westbound and 7 miles per hour, or 21% eastbound. And on Shamrock, which is not the main road, but people often use that instead of Oak Ridge, the reduction was 8% westbound and 11% eastbound. This information has been shared, was shared this week, earlier this week, with the Neighborhood Association. And we will, in January, right after our reorg meeting, have a regular meeting and discuss it. The basic next step is you look at the effectiveness of what you've done and see if you need to do anything further. And I think the effectiveness speaks for itself. That's my presentation.
All right.
Questions? Questions on this slide?
Susan, why don't you lead us out since you're our council rep?
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Hartzell. No, I have no questions. I think that the report that you got was very clear, and I think that the results are really terrific, and I want to compliment the committee because you did hard work, and I came to the work late. Carla Stilson was the council rep for the hard part of the work. So I only came in very late, but this is very impressive, and it's great because you made the point that with all of those beds going in at Aspen, had this work not been done, this could look very, very different today. And I thought the committee was very well run, so thank you.
Thank you.
Rich?
Right, you answered my two questions as I was writing, and I got to cross those off, so I always like doing that. Always love that we can put data.
Military think alike.
Yeah,
right?
I love when we go through data and it can prove that we might have done the right thing. So really appreciate seeing that, and look forward to sharing that with everybody that needs to know. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate what Susan said. You know, we all, this group right here knows how difficult an exercise that was to reach a consensus on what to do up there. So kudos to the group and to you for leading that group. And what Rich said, it's really gratifying to knowing the process that we went through, even before we handed it off to you, to get to this point. And I might add some rather, some negotiating, unique negotiating on the council's part to get a contribution for the developer to pay for that. It's really gratifying then to see, really to see those numbers. It's one of those like feel-good moments, I think, that we have, not quite often enough, but we'll take them when we can get them.
Tracy?
I'm new to the game, so I just echo what my fellow council members have said, and thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, I do want to add one thing, just to remind you, this is the first time we've used speed humps in College Township. State College used them on several streets, but it's the first time we've used it, and I think it was effective, but I think it was also cost effective. We could have spent a whole lot more money and maybe only achieved, a few more vehicles over what we did.
Yeah, Adam, I had a
Adam.
question for staff probably. I didn't know if Don could answer.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was never a fan of this concept, but I do have to say it has worked out very, very well. One of my concerns had to do with the aftermath of the installation and what kind of potential complaints that we may have. I was particularly concerned that there would be some buyer's remorse with respect to the residents and the homeowners that live there. And I will tell you, I'm very pleasantly surprised that that has not been the case. Unless Dawn has taken a single
Not one.
complaint,
Not-
I have not been on the receiving end of one single complaint relative to this project. So I think that's a huge testament to, as you said before, to the effectiveness of this and addressing a real concern in the neighborhood.
Adam, had staff made any, because I know there was concerns when we were talking about this for maintenance, and I think it's specifically snow and ice. Was there any observations that you can share that staff made with that?
Plow truck drivers didn't come into the office to yell at me once. So I'm going to say they were a success.
And
Susan, you had something else?
I think there was a fire on Oak Ridge.
Yes.
On the east end, and I think that was after the speed humps went in, and there were no problems with the
Right.
response, and that was a pretty significant fire. So that was another concern that came up in the earlier discussions. And we have Watts speed humps now out on Brandywine.
We do.
So,
No,
I know one of the first responders in one of the fire trucks, and she said there were speed humps there, and I didn't
Right.
notice them.
right.
you had something?
Just a funny story. I have a converted ambulance that we tailgate with, and we always go up by Center Hills and go by Joe Paterno's grave and go through there and everything. So we speed tested the speed humps. And we have a bell in the back, and at 17 miles an hour, it rings. Anything below that, it does not ring.
It's great work.
All right. Thank
Test
you,
the
sir.
concept.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, special presentation number 2, Thompson Woods Preserve Annual Update, Bill Keogh.
Thank you. I am Bill Keogh, and I am the chairman of the Thompson Woods Preserve Governance Committee. And I want to thank council and staff for having me here tonight to give you an update. Before I get into that, a special thank you to Adam and Mike Bloom. Adam assigned Mike Bloom as the staff liaison to this particular committee. And without him and Jasmine Fields, who was assigned from the borough, the tasks that we're faced with would have been rather monumental without that kind of staff support. This is not a committee that would just kind of trickle off on its own and be able to get the job done. We're dealing with 2 municipalities, and we're dealing with trying to establish some protocols that have never been established before. And so thank you to Adam and College Township for having Mike on our staff side of this particular project.
Bill,
Next.
just Bill, one question. Would you say maybe a future award winning? Maybe? I mean, in his future? Okay. All right.
Starts.
Just as a quick visual, I'm not going to go through any of it, but this is the preserve in green, and it's a fairly sizable tract of land, and again, crossing 2 municipalities, and so it's a big task. Go ahead, Mike. Just by way of quick review, the governance committee identified 4 priorities that they felt were the priorities that they wanted to move forward with in terms of initiating this work plan for the Thompson Woods Preserve. The 4 are listed here. Just a couple of comments about a couple of them. Under the branding and education, these are, by the way, in a priority type list, so that you get a sense of where our priorities were for the 4. But with regard to the web presence, we currently have the beginnings of our website, and it can be, at the moment, accessed through the College Township website. We haven't gone solo with it yet, because we want to make sure that there are some things that are in place that haven't been decided yet. With regard to the signage piece under branding and education, we were very fortunate to work early on with a Penn State group that provided us, these are students, and graduate students in this case, provided us with 4 very well done proposals about signage and wayfinding in this type of environment. And I don't think, having put things out to bid in other circumstances, I don't think we could have gotten a better response in terms of possible alternatives for signage and wayfinding. As we move forward with the whole signage and wayfinding within the preserve, that's going to, of course, cost some money. And at the moment, we're kind of looking at that endeavor as being a grant endeavor where we go after some significant grant money to complete that portion of the project. The maintenance kind of thing speaks for itself. At the moment, we're doing the minimum amount of maintenance that needs to be done with regard mostly to health and safety. And we're still discussing the kinds of things that may ultimately expand that somewhat, but remembering that this particular project is not necessarily the nature center kind of thing. This is a preserve, and so we're not looking at necessarily a high level of maintenance. The vegetation and forest management part of this project is daunting. If it grows in central Pennsylvania, chances are it grows in the Thompson Woods Preserve, among other places. So when we're talking about invasives and some of that kind of thing, ultimately a management plan and a management direction for the vegetation and the wildlife is something that is going to be an ongoing kind of thing. It probably will not be done in a one project fits all, just because of the size of the preserve. Enforcement, we know that this is a piece, and I can say to you that I have reached out to Smokey the Bear, and he hasn't answered me yet. Okay? Next slide. We said that we were going to put out a survey, and we did, to get some feedback from the respective councils, Borough Council, our council, and some of the staffs, and to make sure that we were all on a relatively similar page. We didn't want the governance committee heading in one direction when the electeds, for example, were clearly looking at something quite different. And so we put out a survey. We weren't excited about the response that we got in terms of numbers of people who responded. Now, this was not a public survey. This was concentrated to specific areas and groups within councils and staff. However, if you go down to the third, fourth, and fifth bullet, those three bullets at least lined up with the things that the governance committee seemed to be aligned with as well. So what that did tell us was that there is some similarity in terms of where we're headed with this project and what's important. And that kind of feedback was significant because we really did not want to go off in a direction that could not be supported by the electeds and their respective staffs. But we were a little disappointed in terms of I think when I pitched this to you, it was a teacher homework kind of thing, and not everybody got their homework in. A sizable amount of money was involved in the original purchase of this property and for the nature preserve, and it came primarily from DCNR. And they saw their contribution primarily as being the purchase of a conservation easement for the property. And as part of that whole process, the deeds to that property went to each of the municipalities. So DCNR wasn't interested in owning this particular tract. However, they saw the value in developing it as a nature preserve. And so they retained the conservation easement part of the final agreement. In turn, the DCNR went to Clearwater Conservancy and asked them to be the easement monitor, which is a fairly critical task because if we get out of alignment with what DCNR really feels we should be doing with this preserve in their mind, then that out of compliance, we're not sure what it would create, but one of the things in one of the documents that I read from a long time ago was that this property could return to the original owners or their heirs, whether that's where it would go, but we don't want to find out. So as we researched this as a governance committee and started to realize how much responsibility Clearwater Conservancy was going to have in the management end of things, especially as a conservation issue, we decided that it was time for us as a group to have some conversation with Clearwater as to how we wanted to proceed, because they are a critical management partner in this. We first met with the manager and Tom Fontaine from the borough because they were the two actors that were kind of in charge when this whole thing, and we wanted to get their perspective on Clearwater and the roles of the two municipalities. Then we went and met with the relatively new director of Clearwater and one of her staff people in two cases. One where Mike and I met directly with them, and one in which the committee met with them to talk about what they saw as their role in this particular preserve. And I can tell you that even now, without any special relationship, they have the obligation to make an annual report to DCNR as to whether we're in compliance with regard to the parameters of this particular piece of property. And I can report that this year's compliance letter indicated that we were in compliance and there were no issues. But we're going to continue to have conversation with Clearwater, and just so that you're aware of this, it may mean that we ask to revise the committee makeup to include Clearwater specifically, which it doesn't at the moment. And so, you know, that's to come, but Clearwater will definitely have a say in that and how they would like to proceed. In terms of projects and initiatives that we've been involved with in the last year, we've had interaction with 2 Penn State University groups. I mentioned the branding and wayfinding signage group, and like I say, we could have paid an awful lot of money to a consultant to do the quality of what we got from that university graduate student group. It is marvelous. Mike has that stuff in the office, and it's my thought that it probably will avoid having to go out to get a consultant to come in and save us a good bit of money as we pursue the wayfinding and branding. We also have a trail maintenance issue that has come up. Just came up. It's on the bike trail that is in the preserve, and there's a low spot. And where there's a low spot and you get moisture, you get mud. And this is the bike trail, and it's a difficult and potentially hazardous spot. And so we are looking at that, and I believe that your CIP has some money set aside to assist in getting some repair to that, that will meet the standards that have to be met in terms of the preserve and DCNR. So we're looking forward to that occurring in this next year, utilizing that. Brings up one issue that we've talked about between the 2 municipalities. How do we pay for some of this little stuff? $10,000 to some might be little, but you know, kind of at the moment, the protocol is if it's little stuff in College Township will look at taking care of it. If it's little stuff on the borough side of the line, the borough will take care of, you know, looking at the funding and putting it together. And at the moment, you know, that's kind of where we're at with that. And that's why it happened to, in your particular case, show up on your CIP, because it is on the College Township side of the map. A quick look ahead. We're going to continue talking with Clearwater. We're looking at this next year finishing that trail maintenance project. We're going to do a deeper dive into the wayfinding signage kind of issues and see how we want to proceed. Like I said, I'm leaning in the direction that we need to go for some grant money to cover those kinds of expenses rather than looking at the 2 municipalities to cover them themselves. Both municipalities have grant writing kinds of experience, and both municipalities have worked with DCNR and some other granting agencies. So we're going to pursue probably in that direction. We do have to have some formal engagement with West Penn Power. West Penn Power has a power easement through a portion of this preserve. And historically, it's there, but there hasn't been a lot of conversation about the fact that it's in the preserve, and what are your protocols, West Penn, and do they fit with our protocols as a preserve and so on. So one of the tasks is going to be to sit down with West Penn and talk about that. And we're going to continue to work with Penn State University. Mike and I went a couple of weeks ago and actually did a presentation to a biology class that is going to be working on some of the flora and fauna type survey work. And so we're going to continue with that. It looks as though there is a department or two at Penn State that is very interested in interacting with us. And I think the one thing that I've said to Penn State is, if you're going to do a project with us, I'm more interested in quality than I am quantity as a guideline. So giving us a lot of something isn't necessarily where we're headed with regard to that kind of negotiation. Any questions?
All right, Rich, you want to go ahead?
No, another of those projects that we saw started, and we've come to this, and it sounds like we're finally getting to the point of activities. So it'll be nice to see us to be able to execute on those.
All right, Eric, questions?
Two. The slide that, Bill, the slide that showed the survey results, just so I understand it, they went out to 12 elected officials, correct?
I didn't hear it.
The top line, 50% response rate from councils, township and borough, that would be 7 elected officials at the borough, 5 here.
That's correct.
So you only had 6 responses.
I
Correct,
believe that was right.
yeah. College Township's batting average was higher, if I'm being honest. But yeah, we had 6 responses.
And I remember that, there were multiple reminders that went out after that, and so I gotta tell you, that's really disappointing. It really didn't take that much effort to complete.
There was a brief discussion, Eric, about whether we were going to name names or not. And the decision was we weren't going to name names.
Okay, well, Mike said enough already. So using those numbers, basically 83% means 5 out of the 6. All right, so that
Right.
makes me feel a little better. And 6 out of the 6 identified priority tasks. So the other question is, the referenced report. Adam, is that what we get once a year in our packets?
Yeah, typically it's essentially a boundary survey is part of that, and a just general survey, if you will, of the overall condition of Thompson Woods Preserve. And yes, that is something that Clearwater puts together. There are typically representatives from both the borough and the township staff. Dawn, you've been on several of those. Amy, I think, has been on several of those, in addition to probably Mike as well.
I have not.
You haven't made one yet, but they're usually pretty well attended, and that results in the report that we do see.
And I remember reading the last report, and we only got gigged on like one really minor thing that was easily fixable, so that's encouraging.
Yeah, and I think, from what I've seen over all of them, it's been pretty consistent. There's been a couple instances of encroachment on the boundary of the easement and little things inside of the preserve itself, but it's been fairly consistent in terms of the results of those reviews.
That's all I had, Dustin.
Yeah, I just have 2 quick questions. As far as like your approach for the first phase, typically how long does that last? Like how long will that take for the signage and the first phase?
In other words, a timeline in
Yes,
terms
sir.
of when we might. I suspect that we ought to have a pretty decisive work plan within a year. The implementation of that work plan probably won't take terribly long once we get the work plan set up. But doing the grant writing, and in the grant writing, you've got to be relatively specific, so we will have to make some decisions. But I'm hoping that by this time next year, or by the time I make a yearly report, that while it may not be finished, that I can give you some specific guidelines as to where we are in the project.
Okay, thank you. And then my final question was, I didn't see anything under enforcement. Is that because you have to go through the other phases before you can say how you're going to enforce things?
We haven't spent a great deal of time as a governance committee talking about specifics with regard to enforcement. There are some ideas out there, but
Yeah, if I may, one of the things that I think we quickly identified as we were, I shouldn't say we, the committee quickly identified as they were going through the work was the most effective kind of bang for the buck in terms of enforcement was the upfront education and branding. Just providing an understanding of what this property really is and how it's supposed to function. Putting some of that, as you're entering this property in terms of the signage, what are really the rules of the road going in? A lot of what we see are, some littering and, violation of covenants that run with the property, unleashed dogs, those kind of things. We felt like the best kind of proactive approach was let's do some education first and then we can talk about enforcement. But enforcement is a very tough nut to crack because what does that look like realistically? That one would be a very heavy lift in itself. So.
And we do have a couple of committee members that use the pathways in the woods on a regular basis. And they too provide us with direct feedback at our meetings when they are identifying issues and problems that they feel need to be addressed.
In our last inspection, I guess that's been about 2-3 months ago, there was not one piece of garbage that we saw as we walked the entire path system.
Wow.
That's good.
I think as the profile of the property raises and it becomes more attractive and probably the utilization of it becomes heavier, it's like anything else, you're not going to break the rules if there's a chance you're going to get caught.
Right. That's right.
Psychological insurance.
Thank you.
Good. All right, so Susan stepped out, but I did have one question kind of along the enforcement lines, right? So the rules and regs for Thompson Woods are basically on the sign. That's it, right?
And basically what?
Just on the sign that enters Thompson Woods, right?
Right, yeah.
So we don't have them codified anywhere else.
They're tied to the covenants that are within the property itself. Yeah, that's the place where they're basically advertised, but there are actually deed covenants that run with that property that spell those out.
Yeah.
And they aren't necessarily lining up with the protocols we have for our parks, because park protocols.
You know exactly where I'm going, Bill.
Park protocols are clearly different from what the protocols are for the Thompson Woods Preserve.
So, yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm asking. Can we make it a priority to write code specific to Thompson Woods?
I don't know as we're ready to recommend that. We haven't talked about that, but if there's a feeling on the part of the municipalities that it needs to have codification in order to have.
Well, you can't enforce it.
Enforcement.
All right. If you need to enforce it, then you probably need to codify it, right? That's my point on the enforcement. Yeah. So, if the rest of the council, would agree, that'd be something maybe we could have staff look at too. When I saw Mike wrote it down.
And my sense is that that would be the kind of a document that we would go to both councils with.
Absolutely.
And there would have to be agreement with both councils because we don't want to have a difference within the property.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's very intuitive, right, Bill, because, you're exactly right, because our parks and rec you know, our code in College Township is for the neighborhood park. That's essentially what it's for. And it's not for like a preserve like Thompson Woods.
Yeah, it is a discussion that we've had over multiple meetings within the governance and advisory committees, that there is a distinct difference.
Yeah.
You know, the preserve is intended to function very differently than your traditional park.
Okay. I don't think Susan's gonna be able to step back in, but does anybody else have anything else? All right, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, hey, I have a question for staff. Can that PowerPoint be made available to us?
Yeah, yep.
Did it
I'll
just
be
come
sure to
in
share
like right before the meeting?
Honestly, I have had it, I just didn't share it with you. I will, I'll get it to you.
Same with Dawn's.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay.
Will Dawn's include, Susan had the
There's a memo.
trans, well, I
Yeah.
had the trans report.
We can get that to you.
Okay,
so.
thanks.
All right. Okay, so move on to plans. P1 is the 7 Brew drive-through coffee sketch plan, and I guess Lindsay, you're leading this discussion, right?
Right, thank you. We do also have a representative here from 7 Brew, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of where we've been. This is a sketch plan. This sketch plan went to the Planning Commission a few weeks back, and since then, some things have changed on the plan. I believe the developer went back to the owner of the property and had some more discussions, and then changed a few things, which I believe he can talk to you about details. But the Planning Commission's concerns or comments, they were overall pretty positive about the whole thing. They wanted to know if they could do a drive-through lane delineation. They also wanted to know more about an anticipated timeline, and the renderings that were shown, which you'll see tonight, they were very impressed. We also talked about sidewalks. Since this is a land development plan, sidewalks will come into play here. We just kind of went over that process with them. So we do have someone here if you'd like to call them up.
Hi, good evening. My name is Travis Odom. I'm one of the franchise partners for Brew Team Group, that's a franchisee of 7 Brew Drive-Thru Coffee. Just kind of give the council a little bit of understanding of who we are. We're a drive-thru coffee only. That's the only way you can get our beverages. We serve coffee, tea, energy drinks, smoothies, milkshakes, those kind of things. We have no food. There is no order ahead. It's only drive-through. So that's one of the great things about us. We are about speed. We like to talk about where coffee meets convenience. So we're not an attraction per se. 90% of our traffic is already out on that road as it is, and they're just coming into who we are, or to where we are. A little bit about how the operation works. I'm gonna walk over the screen if that's okay. So a little bit about how the operation works. You'll come in the lane here, and then what we have is we have what's called our texters, who are our order takers. They take iPads to the cars. There is no speaker box. So they'll come out here and they'll start texting. All the orders will go into the 510 square foot building, very little living space in there, to start the espresso-based coffee drinks. Once they're finished, there's a lane table here at this stop bar and a lane table here at the stop bar. That's where the drinks are being delivered to the cars, and then they'll exit out the property. So our idea, again, go back to speed, is we want to have a drink delivered to the car from the time that it is ordered to the time that it leaves in less than 4 minutes. So the idea here with just some of the design, these very dark lines, based off of some of the committee's conversations, are rolled curb. So there's a delineation between the spaces. And then this is what the landlord had requested to shrink it down to be able to leave parking. And then we have the access up here as well. So that's a little bit about 7 Brew Drive-Thru Coffee. It's all about culture. One thing else I say is we are 100% about culture. That's, having fun, being a part of the community, do a lot of events in the community as we start up. For our first responders all the time, we get 50% off drinks. We have 2 already in Pennsylvania. We just opened one in Red Lion outside of York, Pennsylvania 4 weeks ago. The beginning of Labor Day actually was our first day. We also have another location outside of Reading in Sinking Spring. And we have 9 under contract to open in Pennsylvania next year. So it's a rapidly growing concept out of Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Cool. Anything else? Ed?
No, that's all right.
Eric, go ahead.
Sure. Based on the bumper-to-bumper queuing I see at the Dunkin' Donuts on the Benner Pike, I don't doubt that there's, a market for some of this. So our goal is to assess the impact, how it fits in there,
Sure.
impact-wise. And honestly, the shopping center opened in 1972, and it was built and designed to accommodate full capacity, and since then we've added the signalized intersection there. So I have I know some folks have expressed concern over adding another automobile-oriented business. I don't share that concern because I think the site is designed well enough to accommodate the incremental increase in car traffic.
Sure, and just to comment on that, that's something different than our competitors. We are, again, I go back to the double drive-through, as you see a single to a double. If you look here, and the queue there is actually meaning we can queue 15 cars in our own stack. So if with our competitors, it would be a little bit harder because they are single stacked. And again, we have no food, so we're a little bit quicker to move people through. And in our peak business and our peak volume, even on football Saturdays, because we do this, in other locations as well in the South, it gets to, this is our peak. When we're hammering out, we have 10 employees out there. They're really pumping through the drinks. So we would keep everything on the property.
I only brought that up because there's a sensitivity to creating another Chick-fil-A on our end of town.
Understand.
But at least so far, I have no concerns. A couple of questions, comments I have to do with internally within the site. Sure like the first design a lot better, because it didn't eliminate that landscaped island there, and it utilized that landscaped island as a buffer between the traffic moving within the parking lot and the constant traffic you're going to have through the lane. I'm not sure a concrete curb is going to be adequate enough, potentially even for your landlord at this point. So I would encourage you to reach out to him.
This was actually the design that he wanted.
I repeat, I encourage you to.
Yeah, I will. We went back and forth to mitigate any parking losses.
I suspect the discussion with the landlord was about shrinking it down, moving it farther away from Ollie's.
Correct.
And regaining 10 parking spaces. I'm not sure that discussion reached the point of the hardscape, the loss of the hardscape. And I think I suspect we can't demand that, but I think it'd be worthwhile to pursue with the landlord. I think we'd all be happier. The other question that I have has to do with if you're making any adjustments to this, am I correct in that the site is already it's grandfathered in from 72, but it already exceeds our now maximum parking spaces?
Yes.
That's
So
correct.
any adjustment to that, in other words, the change from the original to this one saved 10 parking spaces. You're still probably over the maximum.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just throwing this stuff out there for information when
Absolutely.
you go back. And if I recall, these parking spaces are 9.5 feet wide. Does that sound right?
9
by 8.
Okay, so they're already at the minimum.
Yeah, our ordinance is 9. There are a few places where it's 9.5. I think even the borough is 8.5.
Yeah, this lot was restriped and came into conformance with our
Since then.
standards yeah.
When
some
Giant
time
came
ago.
in, I think.
Okay.
Pardon me?
When Giant was put in?
Yes,
All right, and then was impervious addressed at that time too, or are they within impervious?
Well, as part of this, there's no increase in impervious.
Okay. So the only other thing I would point to is you may experience some concern over the fact that although we have a signalized intersection now there at the entrance, there still are queuing stack issues because of the short queue. You know, it backs up across, well, right there, you can see the T. It only takes 2 or 3 cars queued up for the red light to block the cross traffic. And with the additional traffic probably exiting there, it's just going to aggravate that a bit more. I don't know that there's anything that this site plan can do on the plan. This is more of an operational thing to keep the cars moving.
So just for to let you know, when our texters are not texting and having conversations with cars, they also help direct traffic as well. That's the whole point of it. So if in a situation like this, that's the reason why we could send them up and then down and back around to not have them queue out and to mess with the intersection.
Yeah, I think you still have plenty of room to queue till you
Correct.
get there.
Correct, yeah.
It's when you get to that pinch point that it gets a little,
Absolutely.
gets a little difficult.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Okay, Tracy?
I have nothing.
Susan?
Thank you for your presentation. I'm sorry I
Sure.
got called out of the.
No
room.
worries.
But I did see your presentation to PC, the first presentation, so I know that this is an amended site. So I did have some questions based on that first
Sure.
presentation. Some of them are relevant to the site, and then some of them are questions about your employment model, which I don't know if they're appropriate or not, and I can be asked not to ask them, but, so you mentioned that it's a prefab building.
Correct.
So I don't know that we have experience with prefab buildings in the township and other sites, but what happens when you maybe close a franchise? What happens to those prefab buildings? You're bringing the building in from outside. Does it leave?
Yes, we take it.
You take it?
We do take it, yes.
Okay, all right. And how well do this, you mentioned that you're based out of down south, correct?
The company is, yes. I live in Reading, so.
Okay.
I'm local.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so.
We'll go ish.
Have you had experience with those buildings in climates like the one that we're in with winter weather? And how well do they weather?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. So in New York, that was where the first one was opened in Vestal, New York.
Oh, yeah.
So the snow loads and those things were actually taken into account.
Mm-hmm.
We added extra steel beams onto the columns for the weight of the snow. So that is some things that we have done that's a little different. So these are columns here. You can't really see a side view, but there's 3 main columns that would be able to have the intensity of whatever the New York snow load is. And so we've actually adopted that same model here in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Because we are going to be hitting certain areas around State College, Du Bois, Pennsylvania, those kind of things that are going to have the snow loads that are in New York. So those things have already been addressed. Also, we have the additional things that we do, and again, this is more from a safety concern for our employees.
Yeah.
But everything that is in the columns, it is piped into the ground. So the runoff from the up top, when it melts, it goes into the gutters and then it goes into the ground instead of flowing out onto the pavement to create ice issues.
Yeah, that was my other question. What happens with the runoff on water?
Yeah,
So
it
those
goes into the
employees
storm,
would be-
the storm water.
So there are other sort of stormwater management changes in the pavement? Are you working with the property owner in terms of where runoff would go with rain or something like that?
We would as far as what's coming off our building, it would be tied into the current storm management.
Okay. Okay, and I did notice that unfortunately you made the point about the landscaping, that a couple of the islands would be changed with the new configuration. I happen to...
It's just a question for education for me. Is this property already, or does it need to be additional landscape, or just it's a preference not to remove the landscape? Because from my understanding that the lands, again, from my conversation with the landlord, that it was already landscape to where it needs to be. That's just my,
Well, and I can't answer that question, but since I brought it up, I'll express the two reasons that I like
Sure.
the first one. Operationally, you had in place a buffer, an existing buffer between the traffic flow, you know, heading in and out of the parking
Fair.
lot of that. So it
Absolutely.
just made sense to keep that in place. And secondly, it's not asphalt.
That was my question too, and I know
You know,
that you mentioned it was grandfathered. I didn't know much about that, but, and I appreciate that you have the roll curb, because I saw originally the discussion was maybe using cones to delineate
Correct,
the
yes.
perimeter, which
Yep.
really sounded a little, it could become a little unclear.
Sure, understand.
And I guess I
Absolutely.
worry, I mean, you mentioned 40 or 50 employees, and it looks like most of your employees are going to be high school students or maybe college students, younger people. So I'm glad to see that that'll be better delineated, so they'll be safe. And then I do live in that area, so I'm having a hard time understanding the traffic flow. So there's a little bit of confusion when you come in. People will turn to the left when they come in from that intersection, as Eric said, the signalized intersection. So they'll turn left and then they'll turn right and they'll flow into the queue that way and then come back out. And they will also come out and then sort of turn to their right and then come back out. And so there'll be two lanes. There'll be a lot of sort of cars back and forth passing each other right along Atherton Street. Is that correct?
They would come in here, they would come in here.
Yep.
And then they would turn left.
That's where, okay.
Right, they would turn left here, and get in lane here, come back out, and then
Okay.
make the right-hand turn and leave.
And how many cars an hour do you think when you're at peak? Just curious.
At peak, per hour.
Yeah, and that would be mornings and before work?
So
drive
the
times?
one of the differences between us, I mean, we do have the morning, call it rush.
Right.
But we are ours is all day long, especially in College Town, because what we do serve is we also serve energy drinks that you can flavor. We have our own proprietary energy drink, which is 7 Energy, which is really good. And so, yeah. So it's a prolonged out throughout the day, where our peak period is going to be between 7 and 9 a.m. But then in the afternoon, we do have a steady flow as well. So the amount of cars that we put through in an hour at our peak, I would say somewhere around, I don't know, 30 to 40 cars an hour.
And then your hours,
I
you
do
have
math.
extended hours, correct? You go into
Correct.
later
We are
evening.
5:30 a.m. till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you might have the staff doing sort of traffic direction. Do they get special training for that traffic direction?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
everywhere we go, we build a traffic plan for them. And then also, again, there are several things that we do from a safety perspective. They all have, in the winter, they have heavy jackets that are bright yellow jackets, have 7 Brew on it. And then during the summertime, they'll have the little vest, very much, I know not to use Chick-fil-A, but how they have their stuff out, where they have the stuff on there. And then they'll help out. If at any point in time there was a traffic backup, they would help be able to move the folks around.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be a little challenging when you start. There's a lot of confusion about how to move around that parking lot. I used to work out
Absolutely.
at a gym there, and people would kind of go in every direction. So I'll be interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, and that usually typically happens in pretty much everywhere we go, and then once people do it. And so what I will tell you is there's a lot of things that we do for the build-up of the opening. We do what's called caffeine for calls. So a couple weekends before we open, we basically open the drive-thru up for free drinks, but we ask for donations we'll pick a charity in the community, and we'll raise a bunch of money for them and give that back. And then on the Friday, we do stuff for the local first responders and their families to let them come out and get drinks, and then we do stuff that weekend. So that's the first taste that people get of our understanding of how the drive-thru works.
Right.
And then our next week when we do training, that weekend of training, we would do what's called Friends and Family. So we basically open the drive-thru up and you get a free small drink for everyone. So it's, again, more education for the customer, because a lot of it is we're new, we're not our competitors. We've got to educate the customers on who we are, what we have, and all these other kind of things. So we do that to speed up the process, so that when we grow the business, everybody understands, to help with those situations, how the traffic flows, what's going on. And at that time, we have a bunch of extra hands outside, directing traffic, keeping people safe, understand the flow of how we do business.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
all your
welcome.
answers and your
Absolutely.
time. Thank you.
Rich?
Yes, thank you. Just one administrative note. This is the planning commission's fault.
No, the planning commission did see the one prior to this.
Okay.
That was originally in your packet. This one came in just a day or so ago.
This is some of the revised things that we had made based off the planning commission and conversations with the landlord.
Yeah, their thing was the curbs. They definitely wanted curbs. They were concerned cars would just start cutting through.
Yep. In or out, yeah.
Yep.
So that would go to my next question. Could you confirm on the drawing where curbs, physical curbs are going to be?
So the rolled curbs for the traffic, it would be any of the outside curb here. These lines here would be rolled curb.
So when you're saying rolled, that's the low profile?
Low profile, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And the internal blue, that's just striping?
Yes, sir. This is just striping to delineate the
What is the
lines.
purpose of the cross, that one stall there?
Handicap.
Oh, okay.
And this
Oh,
is
you're
just,
striping the whole
this
thing.
is an
Okay.
exterior storage and cooler. And then this will be, not all of it will be concrete, but there will be sidewalks here. That's where our textures walk.
Right, so what will be the accessible path from that parking, that ADA stall to, what was is the purpose for people to come in and place an order?
No,
For
so they're-
orders to
they're-
be delivered to them there?
It's just,
Or-
it's part of the code. I mean, again, this could change depending on, once we get coding and stuff. This is just a bare sketch
Okay.
plan. So we haven't got it all the way into the code
Okay.
aspect of everything
Okay.
and those things, so we'll have to do that.
Yeah, you're
but-
gonna have an accessible path needed somewhere.
Correct,
to that.
because this is gonna be, we do have walk-ups for our, we'll
Yep.
talk again about, the
Yep.
local, like EMS and things that can't get through our drive-throughs, so they'll be able to walk up here, and get that, so we will, in our full plan set, we'll have a plan for that.
Okay, that one's gonna come back. Where are the iPad orders taken? At the back of the?
Anywhere along here, so.
Okay, but in general, what would be your normal, I'm gonna take an order spot in that?
Wherever the car is, I mean, so that I know that sounds,
Where is your person gonna meet the car in the queue?
it could be here, it could be here, it could be here, it could be here. It just,
I understand that it could be. Where would, in an ideal situation, where would you be going to them? Where they're entering the queue, at the back of the queue, or?
so again, like I said, I understand your question, but as you drive through, if there's 10 cars in stack and we've already caught up, if we've already taken this order, then we're moving on to the next order. And then the next-
Understood.
Yeah.
If there's one car,
If-
where are they gonna pick them up?
Right here. If there's
Okay,
one car,
they're gonna
right
wait
here.
till
Yeah.
they get
No,
all the way around?
I just wanna make
Gotcha.
sure, yeah.
Yep, okay. And then how is the beverage delivered to the car from,
So
is it
there's-
handed from person to person? Is that, okay?
Yep, we walk right out here, there's this, what we call our lane table right here, there's someone that sits here and here, stands, and then we hand the drinks out right there.
Okay. So, I agree with, on the previous plan, I had that comment of the curbing, because there is no delineate, and people are just gonna do what they do. I got this stall at the left. Okay, the big procedural question, and I agree with Eric completely, I much preferred the first iteration of this. The landscaping that is in there is part of the current approved land development plan, correct?
Yes.
So if you take it out, it's gotta go back somewhere.
Yeah, that's one thing, now that this has been removed, we're gonna have to go back and identify if it was a requirement within the current land
Yeah, I'm
development
not
plan.
so sure how much is there, but, I mean, that'll be the zoning, we'll be looking at that as far as to
Okay.
make sure that
Yeah, that was.
We're
gonna
getting,
be my-
replacing like for like. And I'm looking at that top left area there, thinking that a little bit of landscaping in there wouldn't hurt anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking if it's being required to go back in, then it might push it back to the other design. The one other question, so the original footprint was 112 by 134. What is this roughly? Times 9.
100 foot?
Times 9, okay.
Yeah, 100 foot.
Okay, so you shrunk it up. It shrunk it up about 30-some feet, and then left to right, it's still about 112, you think?
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna be roughly the same. Can't
Okay.
shrink this way.
Okay.
That's,
Okay, yeah, the footprint, the bigger footprint gives you better stacking, or is it the same stacking, or just less, there was green, one of my questions on the other one was, what was the green?
yeah, so again, yeah, that green wasn't supposed to be there ever. It made it in there. But yes, the larger the more we go in length, the bigger stack that we can get.
Because you went from 18 to 15, correct?
Correct.
Okay. From plan to
Okay.
plan.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, just a general note, even if this is prefab, it's still subject to Center Region code. So we're.
I'm just wondering how it's going to,
Right.
how it's going to weather over time. If it's here for 10 years, what's it going to look like in
Sure.
10 years? And
Well, they don't build stuff like they used to, period.
If I could add to that, this is where the landlord comes in, because he's going to be looking at not just this tenant, but a potential future
Right.
tenant.
like Boston, we
And
had
that's where the
Boston Park.
landscaping,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's why I brought that up.
Sure, absolutely.
You may find that it's not just us, but the property owner who would like to see that landscaping replaced. I'm just not sure he was looking at it at that level when you had your discussion with him. I mean, the concern at that point was regaining those 10 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Right. So another question, I know when Penn State at Beaver Stadium redid their parking and stuff, they were required to, or did development up there, they were required to put in islands into the sea of asphalt. Does this trigger anything on that?
Without having had studied this in depth, my initial answer is gonna be, I don't think it's going to trigger anything of that sort.
Okay.
I think that the islands and the landscaping that is there right now is what we have required based on our existing code. And I think that generally speaking, even though it's a much older site, the last time that we went through an evaluation of modifications on the site, I believe that we have brought them either into or very close to compliance with our existing rules and regulations. So the actual removal, we've already discussed the fact that if something is removed, it may need to be replaced. But in terms of triggering any additional modifications or inclusions, that I'm not anticipating that we would see here. But
There
it-
will be a threshold, but yeah.
But we need, yeah, obviously, once things get into a final
Okay.
design and it's coming through both planning commission and then on to council, we'll clearly be able to know that
Okay.
with more certainty.
Right. Yeah, the ADA path was one thing that, having done a development or two, the ADA path always comes back to bite you. And then, the existing, does it trigger the current requirement? Like, if they were to build Hills Plaza right now, it would have required islands throughout and everything
Absolutely.
like that, so.
It's not much
So, but definitely the replace was a big one. And again, I'll throw my 2 cents. I like the first one a lot better, even if you neck it down to 100 versus 112, smaller footprint, but same place. I think it's a better design.
Good. All right, so yeah, I'll close out, and thanks for hanging out. You're doing great,
absolutely.
honestly. So thanks, Travis. But, yeah, I mean, the first design, I think you guys probably liked it better too, because you had more throughput too in your driveway, you know, your drive-through. Definitely just seems to be, you know, more fitting, and then, you know, if that is something that you negotiate, you know, and they want to gain more this way, right, you know, coming with more parking spaces, obviously replacing the landscaping, which I kind of thought too, and was gonna ask the same question, that might be a land development plan requirement. So our staff will look more into that. I honestly, you know, when you brief your traffic flow, you know, it seems like you got a handle on it. I'm more worried about the businesses beside you and behind you on having a handle on it, and that back, you know, on the other side of Ollie's, that back access, because I've been telling you, I live the other way, so I'm not gonna come out to Atherton Street to access you guys. I'm gonna come from behind.
Yeah, but with the rolled curb, you would still have to come
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
here and around.
Yeah, I'd have to
Probably
come
come
back
around the bank.
around
Yeah.
Around
this
the bank
way.
and
Or come this way and then.
Yeah,
That's the way you're
and so
Yeah.
that just may cause though, you know, are you anticipating people turning left into that?
Oh yeah,
throughput?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and like I said, I would love for our stack to be like this the entire time we're open. I'll figure it out, but the reality of it is, it's just not. And it's those times that we know that it's going to be that way that we will be staffed and ready for this. So, and again, like I said, we just opened one in York Township down in Red Line. We tore down a bank that was right beside a Weiss that had been vacant for 4 years, and they used that as just a access point to get in and out. And then so when we built, that stopped that. So they had to learn new traffic patterns around and those kind of things, and we helped them do that and helped them understand the pattern flow. So.
I don't know, the stack at Dunkin' Donuts looks a lot like that for several hours in the morning, and right in that same plaza, the one wrapped around the McDonald's in the middle of the day. Now, I know they serve burgers, but a lot of those people are buying those iced teas or whatever they are.
And those are a little bit more clearly marked, the lanes for moving around, and also there aren't, I guess my concern is the bank, the urgent care center that's there. There's a lot of people that are coming in now and using this differently, so, yeah.
I think you'll see times of the day when it looks like that, and I
No,
think that's good.
I'm not saying that it
good.
won't, right, but again, I go back to, the speed of service until, and I've done this, I've gone and spoken and had some of the same conversations, until you experience it for the first time, and then you go, oh, okay. Because it's just, it's key to our business. The biggest thing with the other people that you spoke of, there's an online order, then there's the here order. There's an online order, then there's the here order. DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever. There's none of that there. There's zero extra input coming into us. It's all right here in front of us. So there's nothing, so we kind of took everything backwards before 2020, you know, I mean, that's exactly what happened. We took a backwards model and actually just had customer service and interaction and conversation, and that's what has sped up what we need to get to. So, we're growing pretty rapidly. When I signed the franchise agreement, like 17 years, oh my gosh. When I signed the franchise agreement, yes, back in 2022, we had only 17 locations open. The end of this year, there'll be 325 open in 35 states. So by the end of next year, there'll be 1,000 units open. So it's one of those brands that are lightning in a bottle. So and it's a lot of fun. So.
Thanks.
I just want to throw out, while I think the concern about how people move around the overall site is real, I'm not convinced that this isn't going to help to solve some of those issues. So, and I do think it's possibly kind of a wait and see kind of a thing. But I think it could easily help to coalesce people's thinking about the overall site as much as it could end up being a problem, so.
Well, and you don't have food either, so the other places we talked about with
Correct,
Q's,
and that's the big thing.
McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, they're serving drinks, so the drink people are in there waiting while food people are getting food, and I know I've waited for one drink when somebody's getting food.
We do have a prepackaged muffin top. So.
That's food.
That is food.
That's food.
I wanted to make sure that
Just
I didn't want to say.
Full
it.
disclosure.
That's
That
food.
changes
That's food.
everything.
You didn't say
Yeah.
food. Let's
Yeah.
start over.
Yeah.
You didn't say food in the beginning.
We have a pre-packaged muffin top that
Oh, okay.
I can throw to you.
How many calories? How many calories and how many carbs?
More than, they're not healthy, let's say that.
Well, we
They
need
say
to-
the muffin top, it's really the whole muffin.
I'm a diabetes nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that.
Well, that's very good. So I'll give you something then that you'll be very happy about. All of our original drinks can be sugar-free. We have over 10,000 combinations of sugar-free drinks in our entire stand.
All right, then.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to joining you when you open.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, we good?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
These guys have so many questions.
All right, so we're on to plans number 2, PSU Beaver Stadium renovations land development plan.
Okay, thank you. We have Mark Seville here and a representative from Penn State as well. This is the Beaver Stadium and bar pit plan. We'll talk a little bit later, but we're gonna keep these two plans together since stormwater-wise, it just makes sense. So this is the University Plan District, Zone 9. They are currently updating the existing pedestrian and walkway areas with some interior upgrades as well. These are concourse level expansions at gates A and D and pavement expansions at gate F. So the Planning Commission did see this plan not too long ago. Their concerns really were none. They were just making sure that staff is satisfied with all of the remaining comments. And at this point, we feel we are. We do have one, when I mentioned the bar pit being related to this, we do have one extra if you do end up making a, approve, yeah, if you make a motion tonight. Thanks, Adam. We do have one extra that we would like you to consider. So Mark Stills here.
Yeah, Mark, I just have to comment very quickly. You've filled in this so nicely since you've come to the Planning Commission with a sketch plan.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Lindsay. With me tonight here also is Matt Leah from Penn State Project Manager for the Beaver Stadium project. I don't know if you want to review the plans sets or not, if you had a chance to look at them. I also included some diagrams that I think might be helpful relative to the bar pit conversation.
Mark,
Some
could you
other
just state your
examples.
last name for the record?
I'm sorry, Mark Seville with HRG.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
But essentially, the approach towards this development is mostly focused on the west side redevelopment of the stadium, which was the last piece that hadn't really seen any significant upgrades in a long period of time, including, if you've ever been in the press box, that area that really needed some new work done to it from that side of it. They're really focused on the fan experience also, so we're gonna add some fencing and some secure fence zones out there to expand out the area for ticketing and increasing the fan experience with inside the secure zone within the building. We've reviewed it consistently and with the emergency services personnel to make sure they're comfortable with all of those access points and their ability to access in various locations and areas from that side of it. There are going to be some lighting upgrades. They're going to obviously add some different price points for seating on the west side with club seating, lower seating, executive and founder lounge suites. The one significant element to this also is the expanded concourses that they're doing with this is really about the safety of the movement of people up on the concourse level, because some of the concourses were really tight. And so we're expanding the width of those to get more free movement of the people up at the concourse level as they're circulating around that. The Gate F concourse will be expanded to help get the fan traffic into the stadium. I don't know if you've been to a game yet this year, but with the early addition of the escalators, they have significantly improved the movement of people from field level up to the concourse levels to those areas. And what I heard from the last game was that the escalators improved the exit from the stadium also, that they were able to clear the stadium within an hour after the end of the game because the escalators were significant improvement in moving people out of the stadium from that side of it. They're going to upgrade the press box. They're going to add 2 new video boards, replacing the current video boards that are there. They're going to improve that Wi-Fi cellular service that everybody likes to complain about inside the stadium. And upgraded concessions inside the building, improved restrooms, again, some upgrades to that, and essentially it's about increasing also the security and safety for the fan experience in Beaver Stadium. I do have some slides that I added on just tonight to help explain more about the stormwater side of it and the other elements for Beaver Stadium. They're queued up, you can pull them up. You zoom that all the way out. Is it all the way out? There we go. Close enough. So essentially, Beaver Stadium has a lot of existing stormwater management already underground in the grass lawns where we're managing rate peak control. We're actually increasing that within the site, still underneath of it, but we don't have the space area available to do the water quality, water volume management. The existing stadium is served, excuse me, by 2 major drainage areas, Bathgate Detention Facility, existing regional, and there is existing flows that go to the Foxhall Stormwater Management Facility, which is a significant water quality facility. But also with this project, we're going to be expanding the water quality management and recharge volumes that we're doing with it by adding into it the Bar Pit Stormwater Management Facility, so that we're managing the water quality and water volume elements for the project as required by the DEP's back 20 rule. If you take your existing impervious, we're increasing impervious only slightly with the project, but we have to analyze it based on the criteria for the permitting. So we have to assume existing impervious area is less by 20% overall, and then compare that to the proposed conditions, so that we're now over managing for the increases in flows and water quality managements for it. And we're trying to do it on a regional basis in the areas where it's right to manage those stuff for recharge on campus, where it's not in areas where it's going to have a negative impact with karst soil features and all the utilities and infrastructure that we have on campus. And that was the purpose for providing that, so you guys understand the stormwater management at the Beaver Stadium is managed on site with some of it, but that's only the peak flow rates that we're managing it. But the water quality, water volume, and others are in zones and regions that are really well suited to manage that type of a water management, stormwater management facilities. Have some other slides with that too, just to provide a little bit more visual clarity relative to the spaces outside the stadium that we're capturing inside the gated fenced area to increase the spaces that are now technically inside the stadium with those areas from the parking lot and all the way over to Porter Road. And those are the hardscapes and areas that we're creating fan zones within that space after you get inside the stadium and you're already ticketed, and having the ability to create a fan experience at the stadium before you just go up into your seats. And then the next one is probably something you've already seen, but it's the rendering of what that west side is going to look like from the parking lot. And open for any questions.
Okay. Tracy, you want to go ahead?
I don't have it.
Okay. Susan?
You talked about the stormwater management, and that was the only real question that I had, because you were increasing the hardscape around the stadium, correct?
Correct.
And I'm not an expert on stormwater management, but you talked about the quality of the water, so I don't really understand what that piece of it is about.
Don can speak a bit more
Yeah.
to it than I can.
Or Jerry,
specifically.
yeah.
Well, basically, with like our stormwater ordinance, you have your peak flows. You
Right.
have to make sure your post-development peaks are no greater than your pre-development peaks. But then there's also a water quality aspect where you're treating the water.
Okay.
And that's what Mark was explaining, is that on site, it's pretty tight, so all you're doing there is the peaks. You're making sure that your peaks post-development stay less than or equal to the pre-development. But then these off-site facilities, that's where the water will go. It'll get in, some of it's going to be infiltrated. It'll go through filtration to get the water quality volumes they need. And the one thing that Lindsay was talking about that we want to add is one of the other conditions to the plan is that bar pit stormwater management facility must be put in as part of the very beginning of the project.
And that's a new facility, the bar?
Yes.
Yes, that's new construction.
Okay.
So we just want to make it clear that we want that done, and I'm sure DEP is saying the same thing. So, and I believe actually that came about as part of conversations with DEP on how best to handle the water quality issues.
Yeah, before we even submitted a design, we met with DEP and we went over and over about where's the best place and how we want to manage it. And we had a couple of different locations that were being considered until we settled on that location where they felt that was going to be the best location that did the most amount of effective stormwater management and water quality before it leaves the university's property directly.
And it's the same at the Bathgate. There's actually a forebay to that basin where you get your water quality, the treatment of the water. So those are the two facilities that handle the water quality issue.
Okay.
That was my question.
Rich?
Yeah, a lot going on. Small project, right? The, everything I saw is improvements. I love seeing the investment. I mean, that's a world-class asset, and that we're investing in it for more use is good. I had questions on the stormwater. You already touched on those. We're already addressing those. But in general, Penn State has always been sensitive to not increasing issues downhill for College Township, so we appreciate that. From the general concept of it, I like that you're increasing the fan experience, but you're also increasing the security perimeter for that type of facility, which is a sure positive. And the other one that I really liked is more points of egress. That's when you got to get out of there, it's a great thing. I will tell you, I was at West Virginia through the storm, and they had to vacate the stadium. It was not good. So I think we'll do better. We would do better now, but this will make it even better. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Safety of the participants and the people visiting the stadium was one of the priorities from the beginning in the design concepts that were being developed.
Okay. I would just echo pretty much everything everyone else has said. Eric?
Yeah, same here, Mark. The slide there helps because really we're just looking at what's happening outside in the footprint of the building. Everything that you're doing inside is great. It's driven by the business. It's big business now. Makes sense. So prior to seeing that, it was difficult to get a grasp of really what it was going to look like. You just on the engineer drawings, that was tough. Question for staff, are we reviewing this under the UPD, or is this this is in a UPD district? So
Yes.
that's why everything is looked at regionally, stormwater. I mean, everything does have to be contained on site. And, okay, we used to have a zoning map up here, and is it still there?
I wonder where that went.
Well, the official map is here.
All right, but I used to be able to look up and
Yep.
see if things
You're
were
right.
in UPD or not.
Yep, you're right.
So having said that, though, given the nature of this project, it would have been nice to have some architectural renderings. All I've really seen was that slide. I mean, we get architectural renderings for little tiny drive-through things on sketch plans, given it's a $700 million project and obviously it's high profile and interest. It would have been nice to have a few of those just to look at. I know it's not required. It's just,
Noted.
It's just a comment. You know you can't stand in here before me without getting a dig or two.
I know.
So, and just in closing, I would say that the escalators work really good in the stadium. Is there any way to get them in the parking lot post-game? That's all I got.
All right. Staff, anything to add?
I got my dig in early, so.
All right. Mark, thank you. All right, so we have, in addition to the recommended motion, right?
I do, yeah. I have it written down if someone wants to
Yeah,
take
you
a look
wanna-
at it. You wanna pass that?
Who wants to take a stab at it?
I will, but does Mr. Leo have anything he would like to talk to us about?
Yeah.
I'm just here for moral support from all.
Moral
If
support.
you have any questions, you can feel free to ask, but thanks, Rich.
Appreciate it. Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to recommend approval of the land development plan dated August 19th, 2024, last revised September 9th, 2024, for the Pennsylvania State University Beaver Stadium renovation preliminary final land development plan, subject to the following conditions. Within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied. Final signatures must be obtained, and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds Office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. 2, pay all outstanding review fees. 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments. 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. 5, provide proof of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, approval. 6, consistent with the stormwater plan provided, the bar, pit, and Beaver Stadium plans shall be recorded concurrently with construction occurring in a manner to encourage additional stormwater infiltration in the Big Hollow watershed prior to expansion of the stadium impervious. And then finally, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So,
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to reports, the manager's update.
Yes, 3 things that I would like to bring to your attention are in the manager's update report in this agenda. Solar power purchase agreement, comment from our last meeting about actually expecting contracts and approval by 10/31. I think it's been delayed, mostly because the working group that had been scheduled to meet last week was actually postponed to a future date. So that continues to chug along. With respect to Path to Campus, we have received an estimated engineering cost from Keller Engineering. That projected cost is approximately $325,000 for the engineering that is related to the project. So staff is presently, that was just received, and staff is presently reviewing that. That will give us a good sense of both a overall cost factor related to engineering, but also timing as well. So there'll be more to come as this continues to advance. And the last thing that I wanted to mention had to do with the sinkhole at the Nittany Mall. I can tell you that as of the 25th of September, the actual sinkhole was in fact completely repaired. Corresponding with the repair, we had the rain, so the related site work, finishing work, grading and seeding kind of a thing, rock hounding and seeding have yet to take place, but that is going to be occurring here probably by the end of the week. So that project in and of itself is essentially wrapped up at this point. I can tell you that the project is going to wrap for a lesser amount than what the bid was awarded. So there were some savings that were realized in the actual repair of the sinkhole. I don't have those details, but that is very recent information. And the other item that I wanted to mention is that the noted October 3rd court date which was pertaining to an injunction, has been canceled. The local attorney representing the property owners had viewed the fact that the repair has already been made, and thus the injunction really was moot, and thus the hearing was canceled. So those are the updates. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions on any of those that I covered or any of the others that are listed in the report.
Questions for the manager?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Adam, what you just said, is that referencing the last item?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so COG Regional County Liaison Reports. And so I know, Eric, you had submitted a written report.
Right, for the MPO.
Yep. Anything to add to that?
Nope, and I had Lucy today,
Okay.
and there was only 2 agenda items. I just didn't have time to put a report together, and I don't know that I am going to, because there was no action items. The vast majority of the meeting was spent in a SWOT exercise, identical to what our planning commission went through in prepping for the comp plan.
Okay. Tracy, did you have any?
Our meeting was canceled.
Okay. Susan?
Nothing to report, no meetings.
Rich, anything to report?
Nothing that I haven't already,
All right. I have nothing.
or we will be reviewing later.
Yeah, right, right. Okay. Staff PC and other committee reports. PC, you want to go ahead? We're waiting on that joke.
No pressure.
Be disappointed council members if you're.
No pressure, yeah. Tuesday night, we only talked about one thing, the form-based code. We made pretty good progress till we got to the concept of the blocks, and I don't have a slide, but basically the blocks that were provided are rectangle with lots drawn on it. And we sort of tried to figure out how that applies to College Township. Staff came up with the idea of maybe, because of the required pedestrian access, maybe Lamont with its alleys and all that stuff was a good example. In my younger days, I'm a scientist. I was a scientist, spent time in the labs and all that stuff, and I came up with like a little experiment to maybe understand this. And if you, the Daleview development has 3 parallel roads. If you come into the development and you park about halfway on Charles Street and then try to access Daleview Park, you can either go up Charles, down Charles, come down Edward, up Edward, all that stuff. If you do want to do the experiment, just let me know, and when you're getting ready to start, just give me a call, because if you decide to come down Edward, I'll wait for you out on my deck, and if you decide to come down Mayberry, I'll be on my front porch, and probably take you about 10 or 15 minutes to access that park, and it obviously takes me about 2 minutes. So there is a sidewalk between Mayberry and Edward. So if you're in the middle lot in Edward to access Daleview Park, probably 100, 120 feet. If you can access it from Charles, it's probably 2,000 feet. And there is not a sidewalk between those 2 developments. And I asked a question during the discussion of the lot size, and we started out, I mean, not lot size, block size, minimum 300 feet, maximum 900 feet. And I said, well, what's the distance between Hunter and Goldfinch? Ended up being 1,800 feet, which divided by 2 is 900 feet. So after looking at all this stuff and trying to figure out what a block is, I actually lived on one that sort of goes by the thing. And so that's a good example of what a block looks like. And if you go out on my deck and walk over to Edward with not being a sidewalk there, probably a good example of what it should look like.
Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Thank you.
What's this hanging?
We're waiting for the punchline.
No, left this hanging. Oh, all right, thanks. Okay, I don't think we have anybody else. All right. DEIB.
Sure. So beginning of the month is always our longest report, and I will note October is our busiest of our DEIB months. So bear with me here. Heritage Months. We have acknowledgement of Filipino American, German American, Italian American, and Polish American Heritage Months. Awareness months: Global Diversity Awareness Month, Down Syndrome Awareness Month, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder ADHD Awareness Month, National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Some particular days to note coming up: World Mental Health Day is October 10th. Indigenous Peoples Day, October 14th, and Global Dignity Day, October 16th. I will note in your consent agenda, we have a proclamation for Global Dignity Day. And last but not least, holidays. We are in the middle of Rosh Hashanah at the moment. It began yesterday at sundown and concludes tomorrow at sundown, and will quickly be followed by Yom Kippur, which starts on October 11th.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
We need more months.
All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of the following. CA1 is the approval of our minutes from the September 19th regular meeting. CA2A is a correspondence receipt approval of A, which is an email from Dan Materna dated September 19th regarding the casino, and B is a letter from Pantera dated September 26th regarding time extension, Home 2 Suites, to January 28th, 2025. CA3 consists of the following action item approvals. A is the sewage facilities planning module component 1, the Vernon replot / lot addition 101 Timber Lane State College. Proclamation P-24-06, Global Dignity Day, Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. C is Proclamation P-24-07, October as Community Planning Month, 2024. D is Drivable Street Sidewalk Bid Project, bid award to Antares Site Work in the amount of $56,179. Does anyone wish to pull any of these items?
I have a question on 2B. I don't think we need to pull it. Any red flags there? Is this a routine extension, paperwork, or?
Yeah, just kind of waiting. Well, the entire subdivision has a preliminary plan that needs to be signed and recorded prior to any land development or further subdivision plans being recorded. So we're waiting for the preliminary plan, just some things to get finalized there before this can be recorded.
So nothing really to be concerned about.
Okay.
Just to comment that I appreciate the inclusion of the Dignity Day proclamation. That follows the, I think the borough was the first to lead out with that, but I think it's a good statement.
Okay.
And I wanted to say the same thing, that it also aligns with our township mission statement, which I think is important. And the other thing I wanted to comment on was the CA3C, which is the proclamation recognizing Community Planning Month. And I think especially in the last few months, the Planning Commission and staff have done an awful lot of work, and I think it speaks to how important the work that community planning really is. So I'm glad to see that proclamation.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone care to make a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, none opposed. All right, moving on to old business. And old business number 1 is the indoor rec facilities in general industrial zoning district remand PC. Lindsay.
Hey, excuse me, thank you. So tonight's request in front of you is really what's in front of you tonight is the remand that we're asking for action to remand to the Planning Commission. As a result of our discussion on August 15th, we took some actions, including we sent the proposal to Patton Township. Their Planning Commission saw it and their Board of Supervisors saw it, and they had no comments. They were, I believe, from talking with their planner, it sounded like they were pretty positive and encouraging with the concept. So tonight, if you'd like, I just would like to go through the remand briefly, just to ensure that we touched on everything that council discussed at the August 15th meeting. So, all right, so first of all, the introduction, just as we discussed on August 15th, This is the request to add the potential use of indoor recreation facilities within the general industrial zoning district. And council is remanding this to Planning Commission for their careful evaluation prior to any recommendations being made. The analysis that the council saw at the last meeting is also going to be included with the remand. No changes have really been made to that analysis since you have seen it last time. Some of council's considerations for the Planning Commission, number one, the alignment with the Dale Summit transition. As you know, we're in the process of updating our code. There's a Dale Summit area plan in place, which has been endorsed by council. And just to ensure that this proposal aligns with everything that's in that plan would be of importance. Traffic impacts, especially during peak hours and evenings, and access, considering whether the infrastructure that's currently in place can handle any of those changes. Also, event scheduling, anything large scale, we have to consider going into this place, such as tournaments. It sounds small now, but can something turn into something a little bit bigger? Of course, safety concerns, and this was brought up a lot at the last meeting, talking about lighting, sidewalks, signage, just some updates that will have to take place in the area if this were to be approved. And of course, the regional impact. There was some concerns about the shifting of demand from other municipalities coming here. I know the Dale Summit area plan talks about an entertainment area and has some recommendations for these types of uses to come here. So consider the regional impact. Also, different types of uses. This doesn't necessarily have to be a permitted use by right. It could be a special exception or a conditional use. That would be something that the Planning Commission could also consider. The subdivision and land development ordinance, sometimes when we see smaller plans to come in, they're minor land development plans, which sometimes don't trigger all of the necessary or other requirements within the subdivision and land development. So that's something to consider as well. And finally, neighborhood center potential. I think that was something that Mr. Fenton mentioned as part of his report. We talk about town centers, neighborhood centers in the Dale Summit area plan and in the form-based code. And is this something that could be a catalyst to that type of use? We did, as I noted, coordinate with Patton Township, and they were supportive of the proposed change. And we did bring this in front of DPZ, our planning consultant, and gave some positive feedback regarding the comprehensiveness and of the analysis, and they support the inclusion of the indoor rec facility within this general industrial zoning district. So the next steps would really be for council, if you are comfortable with everything that's in the remand, if you're comfortable with how it's written, then we would ask that tonight you would please remand this to the Planning Commission. We did give a date of December 31st, just taking it to the end of the year if you feel that's adequate, or if that's too much time. That's about 6 meetings for the Planning Commission to review this up to the end of the year. And noting that currently on our schedule or on our agendas, we're reviewing the form-based code, and then we have our joint meeting, as you know, coming up to talk about attainable housing, which is sort of off the table for a little bit now, which could give us some more room to discuss something like this. So that was just a brief overview of what we're asking tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free.
Yeah, questions or comments? Susan, you want to go ahead?
No, I think that the report, the analysis is all very thorough. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the timeline because I've looked back at that. I think the only comment I had was we did the work on approving the PRD and the PRBD in 2023, and now we're looking at adding a use to one of the existing Euclidean zones. And one of the ideas on changing over, or at least looking at the form-based code, is so that this would all be included in that form-based code. So as that takes longer and longer, we're going to have to look at more and more of these things, because we made the point back in 2023 when we talked about that original project that we wanted to be sure that we let people know that we're open for business during this time. But it seems like this is an awfully long time to go as we kind of work through getting there. So I hope that this gives us the incentive to move that forward more quickly.
Okay. Rich?
No, just a couple points in there. We talk about the sidewalks and traffic and safety and everything. The large-scale events, and I think it's a case-by-case thing, but parking becomes a big concern in those large-scale events. I mean, they can overrun a normal facility, so if we could include a consideration of that. I very much love the conditional use in there for the transitional reasons, but also, you know, this is high-touch opportunity for council in there. And then finally, if 6 meetings is enough, hopefully when Planning Commission gets the remand, they let us know if they think that's enough. And then we hear about that sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, question for staff. Lindsay, I'm looking at your next steps. And the second sentence says, please provide recommendations, including any necessary modifications to zoning ordinance, et cetera. That's directed at PC as part of the remand, not part of tonight's discussion, right?
Yeah, this is all directed at
Okay.
Planning Commission.
So having said that, though, we do oftentimes insert a little council flavor into the remand, and I think you've captured that quite adequately with your bolded points, and I thank you for that, because a lot of those came from me, and I appreciate you accurately capturing them. The only thing I would add beyond that is I agree 100% with Rich. My biggest concern is and has been, in order to address traffic impacts, event scheduling, safety concerns, the only avenue we have is land development plan, or unless the township wants to step up and make some of those investments, you know, ahead of time. And I'm not ruling those out. I think there are, you know, what I'd be looking for the Planning Commission is changes to the zoning ordinance that require these things, and that would take care of somebody who develops one of these event centers from scratch. The challenge comes in is when a building gets repurposed, doesn't trip that, we really have no recourse unless we step in, and that could be done ahead of time, you know. Or, as Rich noted, I'm a huge fan of what he suggested in conditional use, because that would be another way to get those impacts mitigated, you know, by the developer, you know, prior to the site opening for that type of use.
Okay.
So I'm not at all scared of conditional use. I find it an extraordinarily valuable tool for the township. We probably don't use it enough. This might be a perfect example for using it. So to the extent that that can be underlined in the remand.
Got it.
And throw in township investments.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
you know, we may have to fill in the gaps that even conditional use can't get us.
Tracy? Yeah, I would just add that, you know, I really think that conditional use, agree with that point. You know, it's a transitional period, I guess, to add to what Susan's saying, right? And so we have to stay flexible, right? So, you know, and I appreciate the staff recommendation. It was definitely well written out and thought out as well. So thank you. And so, anyone wish to make a motion? Do we need to make a motion? Yeah, you want to say something, Matt?
I didn't identify myself. I'm Matt Fenton. I'm the Planning Commission liaison. We met on the 1st, so there's only 5 more meetings.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 5 meetings. Get it done in 5 meetings.
If possible.
If possible.
Thanks, Matt.
Just on the timeline, there was some imminence with the first people that requested this, right? And I didn't know if that matched up with.
There was, if you recall, we did, what the zoning hearing board did not too long ago. That kind of plays into it. But as for the person who was here last time, they may have, I'm getting those a little bit mixed up right now. If the zoning hearing sort of checked off that time frame by allowing it to continue for 1 year, or if someone is under a contract with something. I do know, though, that one of the other local municipalities in the region is also looking at the same changes to their industrial district by adding this use.
If we're talking about the zoning hearing action, yeah, that has been legally addressed at this point in time, and essentially there's a time clock that any decision that gets made relative to what's in front of you tonight should be made well before that time clock expires.
So we're talking about the existing nonconformity.
Correct.
Right, which is not an indoor recreational use.
That's
so.
correct.
There were two, not to muddy the waters, there were two. So there was that issue, and then there was another that approached us. They were looking for a new location.
Yeah, I thought that's what got this going.
That's what was the impetus of this. In terms of their timeline, your note is correct, Dustin. There was some timing that they were trying to pursue. But they were also, to Lindsay's point, pursuing that in 2 municipalities.
Okay.
So,
I'm sensitive to what the workload at staff and PC.
Sure.
I mean, that should be, to me, the driving factor, not their deadline.
understood, just clarifying, so.
Well, but I think we should,
Balance the
also
two.
consider the folks that are requesting that, right, that drove us towards that. That's all I'm trying to say.
But we have to be reasonable in what we're asking them to work through.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, maybe we could just reach out and see what their timing is again.
Let them know we're working on it.
Yeah.
Great.
Keep the conversation going, we can adjust.
Yeah, it's one of those, if you need an answer today, it's no.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Ordinance stands, right?
Or, yeah.
Okay. Do we need a motion to remand this? So you do have a,
Mr. Chair, I move to remand to the College Township Planning Commission our information and recommendations for the inclusion of indoor recreation facilities in the general industrial zoning district.
all right, we have a motion. Does anyone care to second that?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. We go on to
Thank you.
new business number 1, the Casino Local Impact Report, RFQ.
Okay. Before I jump into the heart of the memo, I'm going to kind of start at the back and work the other way. What the ask of council tonight on this item is one, we need your feedback as we're working through this process. There's a couple asks in here from staff and our best shot at what we think we want to do with this local impact report, but we want to hear from council about it. And then, once we have that feedback, we're looking for your concurrence and authorization for us to go ahead and start preparing a formal RFQ. So those are really, kind of the end game that we're aiming for here tonight. The discussion is pretty critically important to this. So let me take a step back and.
Mike,
Yeah.
is staff asking that we make an official action for that authorization? That's what I want to clarify.
I think it can just be a straw poll authorization if at the end of the discussion you're comfortable with
Yeah,
where
I
we're
just
at.
wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that because
yeah,
the agenda says action and.
Yeah, anything that is developed comes back to council prior to
Exactly.
it going out on the street.
Yep, thank you.
So-
Yep, just want to highlight that.
All right, so with that, let me give you a little bit of background, and then we'll work forward into the ask. So going back well over a year at this point, council had provided direction to staff to begin an evaluation and preparation of an independent local impact report pertaining to the category 4 mini casino at the Nittany Mall. At that point, the direction included that the report shall include available data on Category 4 casinos operating within the state of Pennsylvania under the regulatory authority of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. This was still a relatively new thing when we were talking about this over the last couple of years. We've got a little bit of time and experience under the belt now. The intent, when this discussion happened of this study, is to provide relevant factual information drawn from true comparable facilities within fellow Pennsylvania municipalities. While originally this was intended for this study to be completed at the end of 2023, maybe a little bit into early 2024, obviously circumstances kind of dictated that we just pump the brakes. Where we were, there was an uncertainty related to the legal challenges. And there was also the benefit of time. As I noted, the sample size for what the impacts of Category 4 casinos are, we start to get a larger sample size the longer we waited. So with those two factors, management paused the work on this study. Now that we are kind of through the legal challenges associated with the casino and having heard the update from Mr. Pearson at our last meeting, we're positioned to go ahead and move forward with this local impact report with the goal of having this report finalized before opening of the casino. With all of that said, where it was originally envisioned was this was going to be a staff-led effort. I think as we've taken time and looked at this a little closer, heard from the community, we recognize this is a bigger ask than we have both the time and capacity and experience to handle. So the first ask in this memo is an ask for consulting support to move forward. We're looking for your authorization to engage a multiple discipline consulting firm or team to help lead the development of a local impact report. And in order to do that, what staff is also recommending is we procure that support through an RFQ, or request for qualifications process, very similar to what we did with DPZ and form-based code. There are elements of this ask that we know and we believe are required, and then there are other elements in there that we need help shaping. And much like we did with DPZ, there were things we knew we wanted, and then there were things we kind of knew what we wanted, but we weren't 100% sure what the form of those were. And that's where a consultant with the level of experience and expertise would be able to help us better form the scope of this project. As I noted, there were some required elements that we recognized pretty early on that we wanted to take a look at. And many of those echo what was done back in 2021 under EcoSalt Solutions, which was the firm that was hired by Mr. Lubert and SC Gaming to provide the local services and economic impact analysis. Some of those things that were included in that study that we believe, again, should be required to basically update and uplift and have an independent look at are the local service impacts, those being impacts to police, fire, and EMS calls, traffic and transportation infrastructure needs, street maintenance, sanitation, water and sewer impacts, land development, zoning and building permits, and tourism. In addition, we also value the importance of economic and fiscal impacts, those being items such as direct and supported employment, one-time economic impacts on the township, the county, and the state from construction, potential tax revenue generated from construction, estimated annual operating revenues from the casino over a 10-year time period, potential economic impact of operations to the township, county, and state within the first year. That same data point at stabilization of the casino, and also a look at potential tax revenue generated from the ongoing operations of the casino, that including projected overall tax base, impacts to EIT, impacts to LST, revenues upon stabilization. Those, from the staff's perspective, are essentially required elements of this study. It's a look at what's already been done, updating that and giving it an independent analysis with our consultant. The second element are the elements that we generally know what we're asking, but we need some help in really forming. And that's, again, another reason why we're leaning into the need for a multiple discipline experienced firm to help us lead out on those. And those are more of the socio-demographic information impacts that can be shaped and evaluated on some quantifiable measure. Some of the things that we put forward there in terms of what we're looking for, and again, this should be included but not necessarily limited to, are demographic comparisons of our peer communities, those that also are home communities to Category 4 casinos. What did that look like pre-opening? What's that look like post-opening? The mental health referrals by age group, incidents of problem gambling or gambling addiction, and trend analysis or some other form of analysis of potential correlated issues such as bankruptcy, alcoholism, poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, human trafficking, etc. That's an area where we know we need consultant support to help us. We have a talented staff that has a good bandwidth, but this isn't our world, so that's the things that we're looking for. In order to achieve the type of study and engage the type of consulting firm that we believe would be able to perform the study that we're looking for, we're looking at a pretty sizable budget, anywhere between $75,000 and $100,000. So I already buried the lead once, but I'm going to come back to it. What we were ultimately asking of council tonight is a discussion around the elements and the request to bring on a consulting support and utilize the RFQ process. And then ultimately, if you're comfortable, to authorize staff to go ahead and develop a draft RFQ that will ultimately come back to council before it is brought forward and advertised.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
That was very, very good. Rich, you want to lead us out on this one?
Sure. First off, I like the RFQ versus RFP process for this. Your requireds appear spot on under the additional proposed. The only one I might add would be impact to neighboring properties, which can be positive or negative. And then just a question on the budget. Are you seeing any of this financial need in '24, or are we looking at the '25 budget?
I would think realistically at this point, by the time we develop the RFQ and put it on the street, we're probably talking about a 2025 budget impact.
I mean, if there was any in 2024, it would be very manageable.
Okay.
But this is going to be a budgeted item for 25.
Okay. I would just offer that if there was seed money needed in '24, if we had it available, that we
Yeah, if
Please bring it back to
If it
us.
came to that, right.
Please bring
yeah,
it back to
We
us.
would be able to address it, through council action. Great.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I agree with Rich. This calls for an RFQ versus RFP for the reasons you noted. We've been down this path before. And I really appreciate the emphasis in not necessarily listed here under required elements, but verbalized comparable locations. That clearly we're limiting them to Pennsylvania Category 4s, because anything comparing outside that is really apples and oranges, so I appreciate that. Was there anything in the initial one done by the
EcoSalt, yeah.
Was there anything in there that didn't make your list of required elements?
No.
Okay, so basically that's a repeat of what was in there the first time. The only thing I would add then, and Rich touched on this, to that list is it talks about potential impacts and or tax revenue impact from the casino, and I think it really should include a broader geographical area. Rich talked a little bit about expanding the area, impact area, but I think it should, do property values increase or decrease down the road, across the street, those kinds of things. And then in regards to your proposed elements, really just one comment. The last three bullets, mental health, and the incidents of problem gambling and trend analysis, again, we've mentioned this before, those need to be filtered it needs to be understood that they're filtered to isolate the separate impact of brick and mortar casinos. Given that, data, online gambling exists already. So I don't know how useful, general data is to us unless it can identify the change or the impact when you add the brick and mortar. Because we already have those things probably associated with what's available right now online. I think what we're really after, is what's the incremental impact? I mean, that's what I thought we were after from the beginning, and I think that's, I mean, it's helpful to know that, and that's information, the general broad information, but it'd be just as helpful to get the specific incremental impact of the brick and mortar, because we're not going to change what's already there with our action, the online gambling. So that information will be helpful, but what we're really after is the impact of this additional option.
And I agree, Eric, to your point. That's what we're wrestling with is, quantifying that, what measure is appropriate to reflect what we're trying to achieve with this. That's where trend analysis kind of came in, but again, that we would lean on the consultant to kind of give us some guidance on how do you pare that down to really hit that useful data that we're trying to look at.
Because for the money, we need that. That needs to be out of it.
Right.
Because I'm thinking the general information could be available outside of a consultant.
Sure. True. That is true.
And then lastly, I would say that the amount that we're budgeting is very much in line with what you have to pay these days for that kind of work. So, in fact, it
Might be
may
low.
Might be low.
Might be low.
Okay, Tracy?
Yeah, I just echo everything they've said. I'm not going to beat a dead horse and go into it again, but with the amount for the consulting, since Eric had brought that up, I had a question about, are there particular companies that you've already researched to where you got that dollar amount, or is the, what is the approach to selecting the?
Sure. I can take a stab at answering that. We've inquired in terms of the overall cost for the Echo Consult report. We know that number. And I know Mike likely as well. I think we did do research together on this, but we have identified a number of firms that are the socioeconomic type firms that should or appear to be in a position to do this type of work. There are not any that are local. This will clearly be either something, if it happens to be a Pennsylvania firm, it'll be centered somewhere around Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. And more than likely, it would be somebody that's outside the Commonwealth. So, but again, in our quick look at, okay, who would do this type of work, we came up with maybe 8 to 10 that we were able to identify through the help of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So we've done very cursory kind of a level. The more critical element here is what is it that we want to be sure that we're going to be looking at before, in the development of the RFP, so that we can go out to these firms with that request and start to get that feedback.
And in general, when you were researching, how long does it normally take for a firm?
I think the realistic timeline is probably 8 to 10 months. So we're gonna, this will probably be something that comes in the third or fourth quarter of 25, just ahead of the anticipated opening of the casino.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Susan?
No, I support engaging a consultant to help with this work. And I appreciate the proposed elements. I think the required elements are pretty straightforward. I think, You brought up a really good point, Eric, about looking at the impact of a bricks and mortar casino in a community. And I think I'm interested in a consultant that can look at this from an epidemiologic perspective. This is a public health issue. And so it is it's a different type of framework, and it's a different type of mindset when you look at this. And I went back and I looked at Mount Nittany Health's Community Health Needs Assessment. So every 3 years since 2013, the hospital system is required to do a pretty extensive assessment in the community, in our catchment area, looking at stakeholders, you know, residents, businesses, employers. It's very comprehensive, and looking at identifying the primary areas of need, how the community asks the health system to support the community with unmet needs. And consistently every year, every 3 years since 2013, mental health is a #1 priority. So we're not meeting the needs with the community health system, even though the system is trying. And it's a national problem too. So, you know, looking at this, one of the things that I was thinking of is there's the short-term look, which is what happens over the next 3 to 5 years when we bring a bricks and mortar casino to the community. But can that consultant engage in the long-term 5, 10, and 15-year impact on mental health in a community? Or, you know, as you pointed out, Eric and Rich, you know, regionally, this is our township, but we will have a regional impact. So I'm really interested in how the consultant takes that on, because a lot of these things are really hard to quantify. A lot of these things are measurable in what doesn't happen. How do you measure what doesn't happen? So, you know, trend analysis, but also, is there somebody who has a particular skill set in looking at epidemiology and looking at mental health impacts over a longer period of time? What communities have had a Category 4 casino and a university? You know, who do we look like? And maybe it is outside of the Commonwealth. I don't know enough about casinos, but I think that piece of it really has to be brought up, you know, and prioritized. So I appreciate the inclusion there. Thank you.
Okay. The traffic part was done as part of what the developer said to do, right? Okay. You know, and something, actually, as you were just talking, mental health, right? What was the estimated amount of employees that will be working? What were they saying?
400?
It was in, yeah, it was 400 to 450.
Okay, yeah, and so, I mean, just that, right? Probably going to be local jobs, right? Employ people who are already local within a driving distance, but just thinking about, you know, what the potential impact of bringing, you know, more people in, right? Maybe to work here, right, as a full-time job. So, you know, just in that consideration as well. We know we have a housing inventory issue, right, and a housing stock issue. But, you know, maybe that should be a consideration as part of. But 100% agree on all points made. The RFQ is definitely the way to go. I don't have anything else on that. I did see you were walking up, Andrew. Yeah.
And I just want to clarify what I meant by Category 4. It has more not to do with mental health, but it has more to do with regulatory compliance, and oversight is so unique in Pennsylvania because of the level of oversight and control the gaming board has, mostly in safety and those kinds of things.
Yeah, and Mr. Pearson made good points when he was here, and I also sat in on part of the discussion he had when he opened up to the community on that Friday. And
I asked him to lead with that, even if nobody asked. I thought that would be useful.
He did. He did a good job. He talked about the training that the staff does. You know, I don't know that my thoughts are really clear on this, other than from working in healthcare and recognizing that we have such a shortage of mental health services in this area, and we already have a really significant epidemic of mental health, behavioral health, substance use disorder problems. And the hospital system, you know, the health system has done a really great job with this community health needs assessment, really teasing that out. And that's what the community's asking for. And we don't know how to meet that at a, you know, just bringing more providers in isn't the answer, because first of all, they're not out there, but then how do we engage more creatively? And there will be an economic impact, a positive economic impact for the township in terms of the money that we will get, and, you know, how are other communities affected by this? You know, how do they use that to address some of these issues? Because the community is pretty vocal, even after the fact, and this is a done deal. There are, you know, over a dozen community members here with those concerns again. So that's an opportunity for council to recognize that and incorporate that in how we approach this impact study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you want?
My name's Andrew Schaefer. As you probably know, I'm from State College Borough. I really appreciate the discussion that you've just had regarding the impact study and the fact that you're moving forward with that and taking it very seriously. I'd like to offer my own thoughts on that matter for your consideration. Are you able to hear me?
Okay. Can you guys hear
He's
me?
very soft-spoken.
I'm sorry, I'll try to speak up.
There you go.
There you go.
First off, to start with just a few general recommendations, I would strongly encourage you not to enlist eConsult to do the independent impact study, given that they did the initial impact study and therefore they cannot be independent. The way that the study is structured, it might be very appealing for them to apply, but that would simply be a conflict of interest. Second, as you're evaluating candidates, I would encourage you to ask each potential consultant to provide an example of provide as many as possible examples of their past work, and then compare that to the actual experience of the communities that lived out those projections to see if they're accurate or not. Thirdly, I think it would be very valuable as you're discussing this. There are, as you've said, there are benefits and costs to having a casino in a community. My interest, in particular, and the community's interest that was expressed to you at the last meeting, is in mitigating the harms. And the impact study is really key for identifying harms so that they can be mitigated. You're going to get money, you're going to be able to spend that. That's a relatively straightforward problem. What are you going to do with the benefits? But mitigating the harms is the hard part. And so as the consultant is going out and gathering this information, please have them ask the other communities not only what harms they've experienced, but what steps have they taken to address them, and how effective have those steps been, so that we can learn from their experience. Regarding the economic and fiscal impacts of the casino, clearly the previous study addressed tourism and economic benefits in the hospitality industry that are expected to follow as a result of the casino being developed. However, to have a complete picture of what's going to happen with the casino, we need to recognize also that the casino will redirect existing money flows. It will cannibalize existing business out of the region. There will be negative impacts to businesses as well as positive impacts, something that was not noted in the original impact study at all, as far as I recall. But specifically, apart from the business revenue generated by the casino itself, how will the overall business revenue within a 30-mile radius of the casino increase or decrease each year on a year-by-year basis for the next 10 years? Apart from the jobs directly created by this casino, how many jobs will be gained or lost within that 30-mile radius each year for the next 10 years? Apart from the taxes that will be directly generated by the casino, how will the taxes collected within a 30-mile radius of the casino increase or decrease each year? In most of the research I've seen, there have been significant decreases in the surrounding area outside the immediate environs of the casino, which in a closed system will more than offset what the casino generates locally. Due to the lack of economic productivity and the activities inherent to what the casino is. But we need empirical evidence on that to be able to understand what the actual budget in the future is going to look like. In terms of the section where you're asking the consultant to help you with defining additional questions, I would strongly encourage you to ask for specific information on the impact on Penn State students and on the surrounding community. With regards to Penn State students, how many additional Penn State students are projected to become addicted to gambling each year? We should be able to get a number about that. Maybe they'll say it's 0. I don't believe that's accurate, but I'd like to know what the professionals think that number will be. How many additional Penn State students are projected to self-exclude from gambling as a result of their involvement with the casino each year? How many additional Penn State students are projected to declare bankruptcy? How many additional Penn State students are projected to drop out of school each year? How many additional Penn State students are projected to die by suicide? Those questions also apply mostly to the broader community. How many additional people are predicted to become addicted to gambling, to self-exclude, to declare bankruptcy, or to die by suicide? And then there are many types of crime. The initial impact study focused very much on the casino site itself, which, as we've all heard, is going to be heavily patrolled by security and is supposed to be very, very safe. But most of the crime associated with the casino does not occur at the casino site. It occurs in a diffuse region 30 to 50 miles away from the casino. Most casino-related crimes are white-collar crimes committed by gambling addicts who are trying to get money to sustain their gambling addiction. So questions that we ought to be asking with this: how many additional cases of embezzlement are projected to occur each year? How many cases of larceny, of theft, of robbery, of forgery, of counterfeiting, of money laundering in the surrounding community where people are trying to feed their gambling addiction? Not just at the site, but 30 miles out. How many children are projected to be locked in cars at the casino each year? How many additional cases of human trafficking are projected to occur each year? How many additional divorces are projected? How many additional cases of child neglect, of child abuse, of intimate partner violence? How many additional foreclosures and evictions are expected each year, year by year, for 10 years out? I realize that this data is difficult to obtain. I would suggest that one approach for addressing it would be simply to evaluate the prevalence of gambling addiction and then the correlations of these behaviors with gambling addiction itself. If you can estimate accurately the number of gambling addicts, it becomes relatively straightforward to extrapolate the prevalence of the crimes that are derived from gambling addiction. There are other ways we can also obtain additional information to make the study more comprehensive. One would be to ask social service providers in the communities hosting Category 4 casinos about any noticeable changes that they have observed since the casino was developed. You can ask government social workers, child protective services workers, leaders of socially focused mission organizations like the Salvation Army, leaders at groups like Centerpiece who help with rehabilitating prisoners into society. The leaders of Centerpiece here have spoken about their own experience helping people who had previously experienced gambling addiction. They encounter this community. They have insight into what is happening at a much finer level of detail than what a population-based survey would provide. Ask the leaders of the Gamblers Anonymous groups in the communities hosting Category 4 casinos, how much does the casino feature in the stories of the people who come to the group? What impact has it had on their lives? Gamblers Anonymous is not going to reveal the identity of the people involved, but I do believe their leaders would be willing to tell you at that high level of detail, are the people coming because of sports betting? Are they coming because of the local Category 4 casino? Are they coming because of something else? They can share that without compromising people's anonymity. Additionally, crime logs can provide trend information for those white-collar crimes: embezzlement, larceny, theft, robbery, forgery, counterfeiting, money laundering, and more serious crimes like human trafficking as well. And then I really love your point, Susan, about the mental health surveys. I would encourage the consultant to look at existing longitudinal community health studies and take the data sets from those studies, which are not primarily meant to address gambling addiction, but which can still be used to analyze before and after and do that trend analysis that we're speaking about. Studies that measure social health impacts, such as divorce, child neglect, child abuse, intimate partner violence. That data is there. All you have to do is look at when the casino was created and then the effects over time. And because these Category 4 casinos have been deployed across the Commonwealth at staggered intervals, that makes it possible to consider each one in isolation and disambiguate the background effects, such as the statewide legalization of online gambling, which might otherwise influence and help to get the data that you're looking for about what is the specific impact of the land-based casino by itself, what is its marginal impact on the situation. I think what you'll find is that there is a compounding effect where the more forms of gambling that are available in a community, it's not simply a linear increase in the rate of gambling problems that people have. They're not only cumulative, but they compound with one another. People who have trouble with this, when you expose them to more forms, are going to be more severely impacted than they otherwise would. Finally, I recognize what Mr. Brumbaugh was saying about the difficulty in finding consultants. This is a field where almost all of the work is generated by casinos seeking licenses. These consultants know where their bread is buttered, and they're tuned to generate one type of study, which is the type we've already seen. It's a sales pitch for bringing a casino into a community. It talks up all the benefits and minimizes the downsides. There are very few of these consultants who I would say give a fair assessment of what actually happens. However, I've asked people across the country that I've worked with in gambling addiction, who I've met over the last 3 years, who they would recommend, and their recommendations were Goss and Associates. Ernie Goss is an economist at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. He's the author of a book called Governing Fortune, Casino Gambling in America, which details the positive and negative impacts of casinos in different types of communities. His consulting firm, Goss & Associates, consults regularly with clients for a variety of services, including impact assessments. And then, perhaps even better to the concerns that Susan raised, if you can get her to work with you, would be to hire Gemini Research. Rachel Volberg is a sociologist at Northampton, Massachusetts, who's been involved with research on gambling since 1985. Her consulting firm, Gemini Research, has been extensively involved with investigations of the social and economic impacts of legal gambling on communities. Either of them, based on their reputation, I think will give you a fair and accurate assessment of what this Category 4 casino will do. And I realize I've given you a lot of information here, so I have handouts.
I was going to say, I was going to ask that very thing, because I know a lot are taking notes. So yeah, if you got a handout, if you could share that, maybe, I don't know, Mike, if you want that, or hand it off to Adam, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get individual copies?
There's 10 of them there.
Okay, that's great. All right, thank you.
And finally, if any information that I have gathered can be of help, or other people in the community could assist with developing this RFQ, we're very happy to provide input, to come for discussions where it's not just a 5-minute presentation here at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other further comments or questions? Staff, council?
You know, I appreciate the feedback that we received tonight. Honestly, I think we kind of got the head nod that we needed to start building a draft of RFP. As noted, that'll be coming back before you. It's going to take us a little while to build that out and build it out in an appropriate manner. So give us probably a couple weeks here, get it through, probably sometime in November, maybe as you'll be your first look at it. So it's coming soon, coming back soon.
Okay. Great. On to new business number 2, Chapter 93 Noise Ordinance Waiver for Park Avenue work.
All right, thank you. We have Michael Veo here tonight with Stahl Schaefer Engineering, who is representing Penn State University with this request. Stahl Schaefer contacted College Township staff inquiring what necessary steps the university would need to take to do night work on Park Avenue in order to install sewer lines under Park Avenue to connect infrastructure to the new soccer operations center at Jeffrey Field. We do have an ordinance, Chapter 93, which is disorderly conduct, which regulates noise disturbances. There is an opportunity within the ordinance for council to waive any activities that do entail waiving noise at night beyond the hours of 7 p.m. So this memo, along with Mr. Veo's input, includes a letter requesting the waiver and some mapping. I do want to note, though, that I noticed the waiver request in the council action is incorrect. It is actually the waiver from the section that Mr. Veo pointed out in his first line of his letter. I accidentally referenced the chapter that council can waive and not the actual section that should be waived. So just wanted to note that.
Do you have the actual section that we
I
should
do,
be?
yes. It is Chapter 93, 5, capital B, 5C, little c, lowercase c.
Okay, so 93-5 Bravo, parentheses 5, parentheses 5, parentheses little c, parentheses.
Yep.
Is that correct?
You added an extra 5 in there, so there's just 9.3, 5B, 5C. Also, I wanted to note that Mr. Veo did reach out today around 2 o'clock, asking that this extension be from October 7th to October 17th and not October 13th, which is noted in the memo. Thank you. Sorry for those hiccups.
Okay. So essentially, the ask is to allow night work versus what is already in the code.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else to add, staff? Council, Do you have questions or comments, or anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve a waiver of Chapter 93-5B, 5C, Section 8, Special Waivers, subsection B, oh, I think that's already included, allowing Penn State University or their designee to open cut Park Avenue between the Office of the Physical Plant, OPP, and Stadium West Road for the purpose of connecting sewer service to the manhole on the OPP side of Park Avenue between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, starting on October 7, 2024, and finishing on October 17, 2024.
All right. Anyone wish to second that?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
The motion is really to allow the work to exceed a certain decibel level, really? Isn't that what it is? We're not specifying the work that they can do, right?
No, it's the time in which they perform it.
Okay, but if it wasn't going to be loud, would they need the waiver?
Technically, the way that the ordinance is written, yeah, we have start times and stop times listed in our disorderly conduct ordinance that basically dictate general and typical hours of operation.
Okay, regardless of the
Regardless
impact,
of the
noise
impact.
impact.
Right, that is correct, yes.
Okay, that's what I
So,
wasn't-
yeah, We're really just dealing with the time.
Okay. And our time, it ends at 7?
Typically.
Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock on Saturday.
When does it end?
7 o'clock,
Okay,
Monday
because I heard
through Friday.
Lindsay say
Yep.
7.
Yep.
The 8 o'clock just means that's what time they plan to start. Okay.
Yeah, and this contemplates, of course, exterior type work in open air,
No,
as opposed to work that occurs
I
inside
support the
the building.
motion, I just wanted to understand what it was exactly that they needed to get from us.
Yeah, our ordinance is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with
Monday
the-
through Friday.
Monday through Friday, and then 7 a.m. until.
9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on
Okay,
Saturday.
thank you. There we go. Don's got it.
That's all I had.
Okay. Are you wishing to add anything? Okay.
No, I was just here for questions.
All right. Any other further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, none opposed. All right, moving on to new business number 3, the COG 2025 budget. All anxiously waiting.
Typically, your manager doesn't lead out the conversation on the future year COG budget, but considering my involvement and engagement over the last few months with the,
You always did it before, too. so-
Did I? Okay.
Yes,
All right.
I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Well, this is a little different.
Yes, different perspective.
Okay,
Yep.
maybe a different perspective. Yeah, and first off, let me say that typically the COG executive director may be in the room, as well as the COG finance director, and potentially other folks, and maybe is Ben online with us now?
Kimberly's on.
Oh, Kimberly, hello Kimberly, welcome to College Township.
We can't see her.
But given the unique perspective that I and your representative to the COG Finance Committee has relative to the budget, we tried to give everybody a night off, thinking and hoping that we may be able to answer any questions that you actually have. But we're very pleased to have Kimberly, and I know that Ben Estelle is also available as may be needed to address any questions or any issues that might come up. But having said that, there's a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate that you will find in the summary budget. And the first of those is that early on, the Finance Committee had basically adopted a guideline, in essence, a target in terms of increase in overall municipal shares, and utilizing a series of factors not the least of which is the new COLA calculation that was developed and approved by the General Forum. This would be the first year that that was put into play and put into use, along with other factors such as average healthcare renewal costs over a period of time. That target number came in at 3.78%. So that was the number for which we were shooting. That seemed to represent a year-over-year increase in relative inflation that would reflect doing all the things that we did in 2024 and doing those again in 2025. There was an inherent and kind of a natural increase of 3.78%, and that was what that number was trying to reflect. And so, of course, the challenge was to let's try to come in around 3.78 with all the various activities for 2025 in terms of putting together the COG budget. Very pleased to say with Kimberly's help, we, as well as all the agency directors, worked very diligently and were able to actually bring in a budget to the Finance Committee, a draft budget that was actually below 1% in an increase in overall municipal shares. Now, simultaneous with that, we also presented a menu, or as it has been referred to in the past, a big board, and you have a physical copy of that at your place this evening, which is, I prefer to call this a menu because the idea here was to succinctly show what was in and what was out of the COG budget, and also those things that could be in the COG budget that were not initially placed in there by management in submitting the draft to the Finance Committee for their work. So we can get to that in a little bit, but essentially those are some of the basics that we had here in terms of where we started, how we worked through, what our objectives were. A couple of things that bear pointing out here that we were working with. One of the major challenges that the COG budget faces this year is an anticipated 19.9% increase in healthcare benefit costs. We are literally a week away from actually knowing what those actual costs are going to be. But for budget purposes, we had confirmed with the provider what type of a rate that we should be using in our budget preparations, and we were provided with a 19.9% rate increase. And there's a number of factors that are at work there. One of which has to do with the increase in healthcare inflation, but primarily focused on increase in prescription drug prices, especially with respect to, and I'm going to get the terminology wrong, but the genetic-based, the Wegovy's and those types of...
The obesity medicines.
Pardon me?
The obesity medications.
Yes,
treatment for obesity and medical weight management.
Right. Some of those costs are really driving what's going to be happening relative to healthcare renewals for 2025. So...
Can I ask you a question about that?
You may.
Is the COG going to keep those benefits in the plan? Is that the plan? Because some municipalities and some states are actually excluding those services, so we're keeping those in the COG.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's a great question. I don't know, and maybe Kimberly happens to know.
Well, the executive director specifically mentioned at the reviews that they are looking at the structure of the plan, which would include that.
And that's something that's happening at
Right.
state level. Any municipality is looking at that now. We see that a lot.
Okay. All right.
But for this year's renewal, there wasn't.
So no carve out for that. So
For
for
this-
the 19% renewal, that benefit stays in, and in the future, you might look at a carve out for that.
Right, right. I think
There we
staff
go.
is.
That's correct.
Yes.
And a big
Thank
thing that offsets the 19.9, that's a budget record generally. But the one thing that mitigated the impact of that is that so many of the staff that have that are in our enterprise funds.
Yes.
And they pay their own way. If we'd gotten the full
Right.
to municipal shares, that's a budget breaker.
Yeah,
And also
that-
you had employees that took waivers.
We've had employees that take waivers as
Right.
well.
I saw
But,
that.
to Rich's point, go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just gonna say, but for budgeting purposes, because we have a lot of new positions, they put it in the budget at full family.
Right.
And then when they
Okay.
learn, then for future budgets, they can adjust.
That's correct.
So I saw that change with like CCRPO. Yes.
So healthcare was a big consideration in compiling the budget. You have ongoing residuals or impacts with respect to the classification compensation study that had, was kind of kicked off in this year, 2024. There's still some adjustments that are moving forward into the 2025 budget. One of the big things, and many of you and your committees have discussed this, happened to be the addition of the 4 fire and life safety inspectors / firefighter drivers, which is a significant cost. I will point out that again, in utilization and working with the code office and that being an enterprise fund, the municipalities are not picking up 100% of that cost as might otherwise be required. So there was a great solution that was identified in addressing that particular item. But these now represent our first full-time firefighters in the center region, so we've incorporated that. There were a number of absolutely required financial software upgrades. One of the things that I don't know if people know, but I was kind of surprised to find out, is that this entire budget document was done in Excel. And it's almost a $29 million budget, almost a $30 million budget.
Actually, it
And-
came down a little this year.
Pardon me?
Came down a little this year.
It did come down a little, but anyway, I like to say 30, 29, okay. But the point being is, that is untenable. And there are opportunities that have been included in the budget document for 2025 that are specifically designed to address those specific issues. I have to say that, just based on my observation, we have to give our COG employees the tools they need to do the things that we're asking them to do. And I think that we achieve that in the 2025 budget here. And of course, we have typical and our normal cost of living and merit increases. And again, I previously mentioned the fact that this is the first year, the 2025 budget year, where we're using our new COLA calculation for COG purposes. It's not so new, but it is the first time that COG is not using its own, what I'll call a homemade formula for calculating cost of living adjustments.
Hybrid formula.
Or a hybrid formula.
That sounds better.
As opposed to homemade? Yes, okay. That's a good point. Yes, a hybrid formula. Thank you.
The average of an average.
Sounds more sophisticated.
So as a result of these items, as well as the modifications that were made by the Finance Committee in terms of pluses and minuses, where we ended up from that roughly 1% municipal share increase that we started at, that was submitted as a draft to the Finance Committee, we have now ended up at a 5.64% overall municipal share increase. Those municipal shares, due to a variety of factors, number of students, that don't get counted as part of the standard COG formula, the amount of EIT that is collected, the amount of property tax base that is calculated, those results don't fall proportionately. Not everybody is getting a 5.64% increase. Some are a little lower, some are a little higher. College Township's one of the ones that fall a little higher. Our impacts in the 2025 budget will be approximately a 7.33% increase in what we paid in shares this year. So that is, by way of introduction, perhaps as much as I had planned to do. And I would be more than happy to ask the COG Finance Chair if he would like to make any additional comments before we get into individual, or questions from individual members of council.
Rich?
Sure. The only thing to add to Adam's spiel is, one, the interim executive director did a phenomenal job with COG staff in delivering this budget.
Did you say almost award-winning?
No.
I wouldn't. No, I
would
used
say
enough. I
say
used it enough. A couple notes to remind, the guideline, the intent of the guideline was for a status quo budget. What we did in '24, we would do again in '25. So that was to set up that. We already talked about the mitigator with the full whack of the healthcare and everything. The other ones that I would bring to the attention is that we did use a fair amount of fund balance, and that may have impacts in future years, but a reminder that the majority of fund balance is previous municipal contributions. So we don't like to see our taxpayers' money on the sideline, so bringing it to bear in this budget made sense. I will offer that the new executive director has personally stated his goal is a fund balance policy in 2025. He was rather adamant about that, which is great. I think that'll help a lot of things in a lot of places. The other thing I would mention is so we're at 5.64, 3% of that is Hessfield. So we're going to get a significant asset for that, a one-time expenditure of the 3% this year. But when you back out that single large capital investment, and it would have been larger except for the use of fund balance from previous projects and everything, that got you below the guideline, which was phenomenal. So there's a couple other things, if we work through individual budgets or whatever, I might bring them up, but if not, I'll save it for the end.
Okay. All right. Who's ready for questions? Eric, you want to go?
No, I just want to call out Rich again for his work on the Finance Committee and keeping us up to date through the whole process, which has really I think should make tonight's discussion a lot simpler.
Okay. Tracy? Susan?
No, I think Eric's right. I mean, the communication and the information that you've shared with us throughout the time has given us, at least for me, for a relatively new member of council, the opportunity to look at this piecemeal to understand some of the concepts that are challenging. And so I really appreciated some of the emails that you had sent out and really detailed out the budget changes. I think the only question I had, it's more philosophical, maybe not philosophical, but just in terms of understanding a fund balance policy. I know that we have the financial guideline that was set this year, and there was a lot of work done last year to give us a better financial guideline. Is a fund balance policy something that says we can only have X % of the budget in a fund that sits over time? I mean, is that what we're looking at? Because your point is, if you have this fund balance and you use it, watching the Finance Committee meetings, the concern was you're taking this money out of a fund balance, but, you know, you're saying, you know, don't spend the money now because you don't want it sitting on the books. So is it, the idea is in the future not to accrue a fund balance that's significant enough that we would be using it this way?
I would say the goal is to set an appropriate amount because there's variable factors in it. Cash flow is one that really,
Okay.
you know, you got to pay your bills
Absolutely.
before your taxes are being paid. Now, the COG has it a little different than the township. The COG has great paying customers.
Municipalities.
Yes, so, but still,
More reliable.
COG invoices quarterly.
Quarterly, right.
Okay,
So there has to be money there to pay the bills till they get the money starting in.
Understood.
And COG has pushed it to quarterly so that the municipalities can collect some of their taxes and everything. So it, just working together, trying to smooth it. And then the fund balance policy is, this is gonna be an incredibly complex thing because each agency slash fund has its own criterias, has its own participants and everything like that. So finding the mix of that, and then we're doing very long-term things with some of the stuff that go beyond the normal 5 years and everything. So each one of them has their own flavor, and that's why it's not an easy task.
And I'll also throw in the mix that the treatment of fund balance is as much a philosophy
Yep.
as anything else. And I can tell you, out of the gate, that College Township thinks about fund balance quite differently than some of our other municipal partners. And I think that is going to be a real hurdle in terms of hitting upon an acceptable consensus fund balance policy.
The only thing I would counter to that is how member municipalities look at COG and what they do with their fund balance is different than what they look and do in their municipalities. So that we might actually have some agreement, we might actually have some agreement in the College Township philosophy on that, honestly, so. that would-
Okay.
So I would offer, having been through this, it's been,
Yeah.
debate's been going on a long time. I would say it's as much art as it is science.
right.
And if it was easy, it would have already been done. In
Yeah.
fact, I would say that I think that was actually a goal of the previous COG executive director and the entire time he was there.
It's been a College Township comment for
A
a
while.
while. We got to take one of them, you know, College Township has been the pusher
constant.
on the
So if we can get a- if we can
CBI.
get a fleet plan,
Oh, that get thrown out several times during
Yeah.
budget reviews as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and I appreciate the work that the Finance Committee did, and also the agency directors and, you know, staff doing the work that they were doing, because, you know, watching the process of looking at budgeting for a position for next year, but recognizing the hire might not occur until the second quarter. So prorating that as part of the budget. So there were a lot of different things that people were doing to try to really look at how to lower the cost and to bring that in. So I appreciate the work that's been done, and thank you in particular, Rich.
Okay. Anything else to add, Rich?
A couple. So the new membership of the Finance Committee was an opportunity. And, you know, one of the things that we pushed was informing along the way. You know, I think college has done it well for a while, but not all the other members have. And I think the new membership of the Finance Committee did a better job doing that, because it, as what we've talked about in years past, you know, if you inform and educate along the way and you get feedback from public safety and Lucy and HR and all that kind of stuff, it informs. And when I go and I sit in the budget.
timely input.
Yeah, because one of the issues that I've always had was that finance shouldn't be judge, jury, and executioner. the consensus of this council should decide what's important to us and what isn't important to us. And I think we continue to do that. I think it helpful. We also enhanced or reestablished some of the tools, the schedule at the beginning of the year to know expectations throughout the course of the cycle. The guideline, I think, was a valuable tool. Just the general breakdown of the process and understanding that each segment builds upon the other. You've got the program plan, the CIP, the detailed budget, the summary budget, so that these discussions aren't painful. They shouldn't be. And going to general forum, it should be, yep, we've already had these discussions and everything. So with that, I would offer, I have two questions, and I don't know whether Adam's going to be able, if not, maybe Kimberly. When we left the budget, there was two kind of open items. One was the county funding to active adult. We put in a number, but they had not approved that number. It was more than previous years. Have we gotten any direction on that yet?
Kim, I'm going to have to defer to you. Since I've returned, I've lost track of that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Yes, okay. No, we don't have anything on that. I think we are still waiting for the county information. And I can certainly follow up on that, but I don't think that the county feedback and the county commitment impacts not only the active adult center, but MPO also, and maybe a little bit of planning, and we don't have any further information on that. So I will follow up, I will make a note.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks. And I just bring that out because if the county should say, no, I'm only going to pay what I paid last year, that could have an impact. And so before we finalize, and the amount would be greater than our contingency fund.
Oh, yes.
So it's a consideration.
The incremental increase asked for the county is greater than
our
contingency.
Contingency, that is correct.
Just the increase from last year.
It is, I mean, by probably an additional 10,000.
Yeah, the other problem factoring in the contingency is all members, this is a parks project, so it's only 5 of the members, so that factors in it too. Second one, similar, there was a pushback on code participating in the parking lot project, and we were awaiting answer on that. Did we get that answer? That one, I think we should have.
Yeah, Kim, again, I think I'm going to need to defer to you if you happen to have any detail on that further conversation with Walt.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Because it's coming in a little garbled from Rich. So what was the question exactly?
Wow. Oh, I got this. No, if you recall, there was pushback for the code agency to participate. I think the number was 50,000 into the COG building parking lot project. That was still an open item when we wrapped our review sessions. Has that been?
Yes. Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for repeating that. Right now, we've got the entire parking lot repair and maintenance in the COG administration building capital budget. And I believe that what we are trying to do is, Walt has been very open to that conversation. And I believe what came out of the Finance Committee discussion on September 19th was that we were going to try to figure out, one, if code is going to try to implement the EV installation, the installation of the charging stations prior to or during, in parallel with the repair of the parking lot. We have not had any further conversation on that, although I know Walt is very open to having that conversation and trying to find a way to either collaborate and do this project in parallel, or I believe one of the action items that came out of the Finance Committee was if the two projects did not coincide, is there a way that any, if Walt's EV installation was going to follow the repair of the parking lot, that there would be conditions to make sure that any damage to the parking lot would be repaired by the EV installation. As far as that's the update. As far as I know, what I understand is that Walt has been very open to that conversation, but we haven't, that is on the list of moving forward items with regards to the budget that is still open for consideration.
Okay, I bring it up because the budget for the parking lot project was 130,000. Finance only put 80,000 back into the budget. The other 50 was to come from code, and that's why that answer is important, because it was absolute, the push that the projects.
Yes, because I think part of that conversation was also, there was a request by the Finance Committee to try to find out if there were grants available that could offset some of the costs between, because this is a sustainability thing, this is an EV installation. Also the parking lot, because a lot of the repairs have to do with the swale, there's runoff. There are other issues involved with regards to sustainability. We have not had further conversation with that, but because of those elements, that, that is still a conversation we're still having with Walt and with possibly Pam in planning to try to find out how does all of this come together. For us to find other ways to fund the entire parking lot operation between, the runoff, the EV, and then the timing of it. Is it all going to be done at once, or can this be done in phases?
Understood. Yeah, I'm familiar with the project. The big reason on the menu that we had before us, it shows 130,000 in, and we did not put 130,000 in, we only put 80,000. So I just wanted to make my peers aware of that, that we did not fully fund that project. And hopefully there's opportunities for other revenue sources to include our enterprise fund. And without question, if the projects don't go together, which they should go together, if codes work causes any damage to work, that'll be taken care of. We're not going to play the PennDOT shuffle there and everything. So those were two open items that came out of the detailed budget review sessions that were not closed by the time that this got voted by exec committee to push forward. And so I was looking for, closure on those two items to provide that. Then finally, again, we took off our CPI comment, historic CPI comment this year. It was beneficial to this budget. Another one or another two that probably stand to be repeats again. One, fund balance policy, get it done. And two, an annual reconciliation of the CIP, the previous year's CIP. This is what we said we were going to do, this is what we did do, and then we move forward. Because that impacts, in particular, the capital funds, the fund balance for those and everything. So it's just a tool. Bob Long has done it for College Township for my entire time, and it's something, in his absence, I'll continue to push that forward. The only other item that we're going to have a robust after action in October for the budget cycle. And we'll be pushing forward some requests to the executive committee to push to other committees. We can't tell other committees to do things, but there's some things we think they should do. So stay tuned for those and your individuals. Although some of our members think we should be able to tell anybody what we're finance, you know, we can tell anybody anything, anytime.
Say anything.
Yeah, yeah, so, but those will be pending. One of the things from me, from a process standpoint, we really segmented the budget into CIP, program plan, detailed, and summary. One of the things that came up in discussion is, right now we do CIP, then program plan. Should we be doing program plan, then CIP? And I look for some council consensus on that. And if we have it, maybe we could push it forward in our comments. I mean, it seems to make sense to me, but.
Right, if you're going from top.
This
down.
is what we're gonna do, this is
Yeah.
how we're gonna do it, and then this is
Yeah.
what we did.
Yeah, I would agree.
If there's.
Is that all?
Okay, consensus, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, anybody else, any other questions or comments?
The only thing that I would, is there any need for us to speak at length to council here tonight about the Hess Field project? I mean, we know what it is, but.
I'm sure our Parks Committee representative will, oh, never mind. I don't think so.
That's fine, that's fine.
Are you asking because you think that might be helpful?
No, I was only concerned about if there were questions about what is this thing we're doing at Hess Field?
Oh, okay.
And I'm assuming everybody knows that these are dollars for the restroom. And as Rich had previously mentioned, 100% of those are gonna be municipal share dollars. There may be some grant, a minimal amount of grant money that's involved there. But there's no loan, and these are being paid directly out of municipal shares. And there is a transfer of fund balance that's assisting in that. But I primarily just wanted to be sure everybody knew and understood
What we're doing with the
what we
project.
were doing with it. That was
And
it.
this is not being fully funded next year, is that
Yes.
correct? It is.
It is.
It is.
So there's
that's different than what you had sent out to us.
There's $295,000 of transfer from Parks Capital to regional parks. That's one chunk of it, and then the 300 is municipal contributions. It did not sound like there was any grants being pursued for that. You can always hope for a donor, but I think those are getting dried up a little bit. And then the other project is the pavilion at Whitehall, which is.
I'm sorry,
which-
that is the one we have some grant money for.
We do.
I'm sorry.
We have some donation stuff for that. We have some potential grant money for that. And we also have the financing. If you remember, this year we approved drawing the last 100 or 200, roughly 200,000 from the loan and everything. So those two projects are going. I will share that one of the things that I've pushed hard about parks is bandwidth. I mean, they've been fighting, you know, they were thrust into the project management role for Whitehall and for Millbrook. And here we're saying this isn't a good idea, and what are we doing? We're thrusting them back in to manage the pavilion and Hess Field. Now, with that said, 1 million versus 7 million, a little different, but still, we need to let our parks people get back to doing parks, not projects, you know, construction projects and everything, so.
Okay. It might be tough to get a donation for the bathroom at Hess. It's a little easier to get donation for a pavilion you can put your name on versus a bathroom.
Privy.
Name a toilet.
Yeah.
Can we get naming, we'll make a special donation.
That's it.
The Adam Brumbaugh.
That's right.
The award-winning, an award-winning privy. You
Yes,
could have an
I like it.
award-winning privy.
That can work.
The only random thought that I would offer on Hess is the only grant that may hit the timeline appropriately is the local share account grant. We just, if you recall,
Yes.
council made a resolution at the last meeting for us to pursue $500,000. My personal opinion, it's not a bad, swing for the fences opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's already been thrown out and potential, so.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, the cycle though, would hit that.
Yeah, I think November 30th is the deadline, so they could apply in this round.
And not to belabor this, but the other thing that you had mentioned earlier about when the municipalities pay their shares on a quarterly basis, if in fact the Hess Field project is to be completed in construction season next year, not necessarily all of the municipal shares will have been accumulated in doing that. There have been ways that we've been able to address that in the past. I'm sure that we would be able to do that again, but it's just kind of a note to.
Well, in that, if there's existing fund balance in the overall fund, then that can cover cash flow. I mean, that's kind of what we do with College Township. We have 10% and it just floats until, and it all catches up as things come in. I don't have anything. If Ms. McMullen has anything she'd like to share with us in closing.
All right, no further discussion? No, I should come off mute, I think.
So I have
Okay.
the following comments that I will be forwarding on from College Township. The notation about the county funding for the Active Adult Center, MPO and planning. Another note concerning the parking lot dollars from code. And then as far as kind of recurring comments, fund balance policy, the annual reconciliation of CIP activity, and the suggestion about the sequencing of the program plan prior to the CIP, which of course would be prior to the development of the budget.
Okay.
So those are the comments that I have that I can forward to the executive director.
Okay.
And kudos to developing the budget in Excel. I'm an Excel geek, and that still would be a challenge.
Yeah, before we leave, I would be totally remiss if I did not recognize Kim McMullen, who's on the line with us tonight, but also Carrie Asendorf and Vanessa Munoz in the COG Finance Department. Fantastic job, really difficult circumstances. They were real troopers, and hey, they put up with me for a couple of months, so.
And they provided us a respite.
Right.
You say we're grateful.
That's right, you're very grateful, right? Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Okay.
Thank you. It wasn't as hard as you think. It was a joy. Thank you for your guidance and your support, and I just want to do better. So thank you for putting us on that path. And thank you, all of you, for just your feedback, and all of it will be taken into consideration. And I just hope as I grow in this job, I will be a more reliable and confident resource for you.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay, thanks, Kim. All right, moving on then to staff informatives.
Nothing further to report or comment.
I missed my
Okay.
engineering report. Land development plan updates. Do we just get those once a month?
Yeah, we have our engineering, planning and zoning meetings the first Wednesday of every month, and that's usually when we review the whole sheet, so you should be getting that again soon.
So we get them we just get them once a month?
Yeah, I believe the planning commission just gets them once a month too.
Okay. Council, staff, other matters. Hearing none.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, so move, I second it, we're adjourned.